in the last 2 or 3 years. I've eaten a lot. Last time I did that, I ate maybe 15 grams of mushroom. You know, we were but we weren't seeing things. You know? We were, but this is like at a party scenario, so it's not like yeah, it's not ceremonial. I was talking about that earlier.
They're gonna put the stuff on the wall over there, so.
On that one?
No, that's why I had it up a little more.
Concentrate on it.
Oh, yes.
I'm just trying to stay
Okay. Yeah.
Got it. Thanks and thoughts.
I have mushrooms out there already. Yeah. Well, so my buddy, he owns a construction company, and they were rebuilding this, it's like a town, it's called Lujan. It's like 300-year-old homes. They're doing some construction there, and they have a donkey. There was like an event out there, this part of the town, and the donkey was just shit everywhere, and mushrooms just everywhere. And so they worked on this place for the last 7-8 months. So they mushrooms. They just keep growing. They just happen when they pick them, you know, and then come back 3 days later, it's more mushrooms. So there's like a freezer full of mushrooms. And these incredible mushrooms. Dude, I was, they all, so like all my buddies who work for my other buddy who owns a construction company, they go and hug that donkey. I mean, think about that donkey. That's yeah, so we have like an endless supply of those side of them. It's nice not buying them online or something like that. And without having to go like where you can get
I'll try to use are they homeschooled?
No, but really.
Yeah, infiltration is a problem.
I was doing answers.
I think I like peak out best. You know, I mean, the fun I said I did like 12, 15 years. This is over an 8-hour period. You know,
Well,
initially
it's used for old timers, my parents that enjoy it.
I mean, it was 5 mushrooms. They're like,
But my generation,
they're not broken down.
It's a lifelong habit.
Let's do it with a team.
My parents will not both of them, but one of them still watches like that.
Well, we can use chocolates from this.
Kind of given up on trying to see
In
it,
this
not really.
place out in Colorado. But they're like, and those were the most, I mean, I don't know how many grams of mushrooms, but I ate a little piece of the chocolate bar like that. And I was seeing wolves in the sky, man. It was the most profound trip I've ever had.
Nice.
I don't think you can ever have a gathering like this and not talk about psychedelics. Yeah.
Mind shifters. Sure. You're such a pro. No, I do. Nice. That's perfect, dude. That's meme board.
You gonna meme it? Yeah. Rachel got the name, I'm gonna take that. His name is Matt, so. Sorry, Matt, but he's gotta take himself.
Hopefully something like cross to like.
This happens. It's really all the way down. As a biological.
How was that? Where'd that come from?
And then in one event, just everything was, I had to sit down.
Is that too dark? Is that right?
Needs to be darker, fracturing.
So just turn all the lights off.
Yeah.
I don't
There's
know.
enough.
I have to be, I don't do.
I don't want it.
Yeah, that works. I don't have to be.
Good night.
I was kind of a teenager.
Wherever you got.
Yeah, the woods is there.
Yeah.
We did it by the beach.
When everybody goes to sleep, when they all go to sleep, I'm wide awake.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. I didn't even make, overlooking all the beaches, and this singularity of near waves, colors, singularity takes place before my eyes. I felt like overlapping the beach. It was
Can't say that's silly, that's not bad. It's not like a hard drive.
Everything was very
How's that?
Yeah, I guess, does anybody else, I'll go grab a group and we'll get started.
Derick, can I ask you before we get started, are you gonna have a, where can I go and see all the stuff that's been recorded?
I can send it to you. We're not necessarily gonna make it public, but everybody who's here can definitely get a copy of it.
Okay, I think I have I got an email.
Do you wanna introduce yourself to everybody here, cause you got here a little late, maybe?
Yeah.
You're local, so.
Yeah, my name's Stacy Davis, and I'm a local, sometimes volunteer news reporter for our local KPFT radio station, where Derick also has a show, and I've just met you as well. Hi. And so I'm covering this event for our little news show, and I've been a little starstruck at some people that I've seen that I follow on YouTube. So that's pretty cool, and I'm sure I'll be following more of you coming up after this.
Please make contact with Stacy before the end of the day, because one of the things so about the radio station, I didn't get to say this earlier, but so me and Micah, my partner there, Micah, local activist as well, does a lot of music and stuff. One of the benefits of having a radio show, even though most of our stuff's been focused on the internet, is still, we get the broadcast in the fourth largest city in the country, and so we've had our show now for the past 2 weeks on Fridays on FM during drive time, really prime slot, where we're talking about controversial things that we know aren't played anywhere else in the mainstream. The station is community supported. There's no commercials. There's no corporate sponsors. It's what we are all about, right? So having shows like hers or like ours, whether you're in Houston or not, it gives each of us, I think, in my view, an access to something like that. Like we're going to talk about today. You have important stories or things that need to get out that we can put out on the Houston radio to get to a wider audience. Make those connections. So please do.
And I'll probably, for this report, I'll probably go into a lot of your accounts and rip off your content you play on the air and give you credit for it. That's okay.
Please
If
do.
anybody has a problem with that, let me know. Give a lot of credit. That'll be easy.
they should be in. But yeah, so those are the things. Okay.
Keep going.
Do you wanna?
So, just so everybody's aware, obviously we don't have a microphone in this room, so please definitely try to project your voice so that people are watching through that webcam right there, through this little microphone. So if we can just speak up and project for each of us and for them, that'll be helpful. And then once we get through everybody here, there's going to be some people online who will share some of their thoughts and what they have going on. And then with the goal of, so we have, we're at like almost 1:30 now, we have this place till 4 o'clock, right? So we'll probably try to wrap up about 10 minutes before 4, but we got maybe a handful of presentations left, and then after that, there seem to be at least 4 or 5 common themes that keep coming up among each of our presentations and discussion. So we figured after that we could key in on those areas and then just open up for discussion on these different points and let the rest of it kind of be more organic of what our ideas around that. And then if people want to break off to specific, breakout sessions or focus groups or whatever, we'll just let that happen. But, so Sterlin's gonna start things off.
Sure. You guys have a good lunch?
Yes, sir.
I had a beer.
I drank wine for a long time.
So there's been a lot of really awesome solutions today. I love the solutions that I've heard for how we move forward and getting out from under this censorship nonsense and getting taken advantage of by the powers that be, by governments.
Sterling, did you project as much?
Sure.
Exactly.
No, it's all right. So the solutions are great, and I'm on board with a lot of the solutions, especially what this gentleman talked about, Nick talked about, forming an organization. That's all great and dandy. But one of the things I talk about a lot when I go to conferences and when I speak to people is that we are actually already creating the paradigm shift. Things are changing quickly. And not only are they changing quickly, but we're 100%. And we're creating the technologies, decentralized technologies, that's allowing us to naturally get outside of the government, get outside of the scope of the state, and to create more individual sovereignty, more economic freedom. So that's a beautiful thing. Now, what I want to talk about today is how we approach this particular situation that we find ourselves in. How do we expedite the process? How do we put ourselves into a position where we're bringing more people into the fold of freedom and we're able to push forward with more love, more care, and more concern? So I think what we really got to focus on is 2 points here: communication and advocacy. I think if we're able to leverage strong communication tactics, compassionate communication, nonviolent communication, we're going to be able to connect with more people, and they'll be able to understand and connect with our resolve. If we're able to add a touch of Iman as we move through the world, more people will come to serve the vision of freedom. And I think that is of utmost importance. And part of this revolves around maintaining our integrity as well. I think when people see us as being part of the alternative media or an alternative landscape, if we don't have integrity as human beings, we're not going to be trusted. There's been a few people talk about trust today. And if people can't trust us as individuals, they're not going to be able to trust us as organizations. They're not going to be able to connect with us. Because that's what's happened. There's been a massive loss of trust in the mainstream media, as the deadstream media, as Derick calls it, as this gentleman here, Jason, calls it. So I think if we're able to connect, leverage nonviolent communication, we're going to make a lot of people happier. We're going to make them happy in the sense that they're going to step over to our side, and that's helping us expedite the process, and that's helping us undercut a lot of these censorship campaigns that are taking place. Because naturally, if we're leveraging empathy and people are empathizing with us in the same way, they're not going to want to be censoring us. And somebody else mentioned it earlier, we're never going to be able to escape the censor, no matter how many decentralized platforms that we create, no matter how many people we bring into the fold. Somebody's always going to be trying to shut us up. Some bureaucrat, some kleptocrat, some politician, some nasty individual is going to try to undercut us every step of the way. So we have to leverage that nonviolent communication. Just, if who's here is not familiar with nonviolent communication? Most everybody is. So Marshall Rosenberg created nonviolent communication in the 1960s, and his idea behind this particular communication philosophy was to try to assess other people's needs. So as organizations, independent media organizations, cryptocurrency, decentralized platforms, we have to be able to assess what our audiences want. We have to be able to assess what the global paradigm of individuals need, and then try to meet those needs through the way that we report, through the way that we connect with people. And then if we accomplish those goals, if we achieve that kind of connection, we're going to wake up tomorrow and we are going to be the quote-unquote mainstream culture. And I think that's already happened. This gentleman said we're winning. Howard is right. The paradigm is shifting, and it's absolutely going to happen. Now, since I'm in the cryptocurrency space, and I specifically am focused on crypto journalism as the editor for Bitcoin.com, I want to talk about a little bit about what's going on in that space and why it's difficult for us right now, because these censorship campaigns coincide with a very hectic market environment in crypto, a very hectic environment in terms of a lot of infighting going on in the cryptocurrency space, a lot of people not being able to get along and connect with each other. And I think that has contributed to the negative sentiment that is plaguing the cryptocurrency space like a nasty miasma permeating the environment. But this is one positive thing about the cryptocurrency and decentralized space. These tools already exist. They're here. We're just in an embryonic phase where we're trying to work out a lot of kinks in the technology. And if we're able to work out those kinks, and that means the way that we get along with each other, the way that we solve and handle governance problems, we're going to eventually move forward, and we're going to alter the sentiment in the cryptocurrency space, and then more people will get involved in crypto as well. And this specifically does revolve around governance. You hear a lot of people fighting in the cryptocurrency space, and that's because we're not having to worry about a government that's going to sit in its place and exist in perpetuity using violence against everybody. I often say this in my talks. Has anybody tried to fork the federal government? What happens if you try to fork the federal government? Someone's going to shoot you in the face. They're going to chain you up and take you to a cage. They're going to kidnap you like they did me. But luckily in the cryptocurrency space, now we have a new way to resolve problems, and that is through the process of forking off a cryptocurrency. If we don't get along with the people involved in that space, we have technological differences. If we want to innovate in a different direction, we can go that direction. So this is what's happening in the crypto space. A lot of people are not agreeing with one another. We're trying to figure out how to solve problems without sticking a gun in people's faces. And so it's a learning process, and that's what I think is going on in the crypto space. We're learning how to deal with each other in a nonviolent and peaceful fashion on issues that we strongly, contentiously disagree on. So it's really amazing to see us try to figure out how to work through these problems and come to solutions without using violence. But once we get over this hump of trying to figure out these issues, then we're going to be naturally creating the kind of society that we want to build. And we'll also bring more alternative media folks over to the cryptocurrency space, blockchain space, which is super important because most of our technologies are naturally censorship resistant if they're on a decentralized blockchain database. So we really got to focus on opening our eyes to using more decentralized platforms. We've already talked about mines. There's another one no one mentioned here that I want to mention. So on the Bitcoin Cash network, the opcodes have been enabled. They were disabled on the Bitcoin protocol. And what this means is that we can create decentralized platforms on top of the Bitcoin Cash network. There's one right now, there's a Twitter. Who knew there was a Twitter-like platform built on Bitcoin Cash called memo.cash? It's fully functional, it's decentralized, it's beautiful. Log on to memo.cash, sign up, put a little Bitcoin Cash on there, use that to tip people, and you can post as much as you want without having to fear that anybody's going to be able to censor your content. So I think that's all I'm going to have to say today. Just keep in mind that we have to work on our communication, we have to work with people, and we have to promote our industries, and we have to get more people involved, but we have to leverage compassion, empathy, and nonviolent communication to do it.
You can stand on your computer. You can use the computer when you move it.
You're in your cell phone. Someone, one other person, doesn't have to be great, I go that.
Everybody else on the list that need to speak is not here. Anita, Eleanor, they're not back here.
You guys need Wi-Fi?
I just think so.
Look for the network. Statism is a religion.
I'd
Yeah, I'm surprised it's not organized.
I got it. I didn't have enough characters.
You got it, man, or you don't?
He's trying to come up with presentations.
Send it to my email. All right, so while we're waiting on Danny to get ready, I'm just gonna kind of give you guys a preview, and we'll get further into this. So some of the themes that a few of us kind of seem to keep emphasizing. For one, the idea of creating some type of new hub or a newswire or association that can bring all of our work together, things like that. And we've also talked about migrating to alternative platforms. We're talking about sharing resources, networking, collaborating, just all these different ideas. We're going to get further into that after the presentations and really break down those ideas a little bit further. But now we got some. Danny's getting ready. You guys are the last one ready. You were ready to talk. And so you guys are aware, like, people who are watching online are like kind of. Yeah, if you want to, we're just projecting that direction.
Trying to stand in the middle, boy.
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
You can go if you want to know about Danny's getting ready.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Manar Mohawish. I'm the founder, editor-in-chief of MonCrief News. I started out my journalism career several years ago. It all began when my parents moved us overseas from Maple Grove, Minnesota, to living under Israeli occupation and apartheid. And there I witnessed firsthand apartheid, what life was like living under a police state, and witnessed a lot of war crimes. Water was cut off, soldiers roaming the streets, and it was insanity. And so when I had come back to the United States, when I was a teenager, I actually turned to the media to keep up with what was happening back home in Palestine, only to find our media flipping the narrative on what was happening in Palestine. And so they framed the conflict through a religious lens, it's Muslims and versus Jews and so forth. And they simplified it in that matter instead of describing the conflict as occupation or colonialism or apartheid and racism. And so I turned to the media to gain this information, but I immediately realized that the media was the reason why the occupation and apartheid was continuous in Palestine, and why these crimes against humanity were taking place. And so when I was like 13 years old, I decided that I wanted to become a journalist so that I could speak up for those who don't have a voice, not just in Palestine, but people around the world. And later I had learned that Israel was also the largest recipient of U.S. military aid, still is. And so I wanted to so the war machine in general became the center of a lot of my coverage. I started out my career at an NBC affiliate in Minneapolis in the corporate newsroom, and I would try to pitch stories about things that were important to me, like our First Amendment rights, civil liberties, and issues pertaining to veterans, like why are our veterans homeless and committing suicide, and why are we giving aid to Israel and apartheid, and I remember like crickets in the newsroom, it's like local news, nobody cared. And I realized that, I can't be in corporate news. Like, the things that I care about are not going to happen in corporate news. And so that's what led me to start MonCrief. So fast forward to where we are today. MonCrief was started in 2012. I founded it. And we've been covering a range of topics that have to do with some of the topics that I've already mentioned. Civil liberty issues, social justice issues, and bringing attention to the ever-growing military machine. And so from the very beginning of starting MonCrief, we were able to break a lot of barriers in bringing attention to these kinds of issues. And we found ourselves to be at the center of many smear campaigns, and we were targeted by many notorious neoconservative think tank members because we were getting really to the heart of these stories and providing the kind of context and information in a way that wasn't being presented in the corporate mainstream media. And we broke a lot of big stories, from who was behind the 2013 chemical weapons attack in Syria to where a lot of our, the arms industry, how arms are being flooded into a lot of crisis zones and conflicts in Africa, from Sudan, and even in the Middle East to Yemen and Libya. I mean, we've been exposing a lot of a lot of stories pertaining to the war machine that you just can't find in other places. And we've been able to organically grow from getting like just a couple of, handful of readers when we first started MonCrief to growing to getting nearly 3 million readers to our website every single month. And we thought we were doing a really great job. Like, yeah, we broke into the system. We were, as a small organization, we were competing with news organizations that had existed for 15, 20 years, like Democracy Now!, Alternate, and other alternative independent media organizations. But the more we broke these stories, the more we became a target to these neoconservative people, and also to neoliberal, Hillary Clinton-backed and aligned individuals and organizations. And apart from being targeted by these groups, we found ourselves, we started to find that our readership and the articles that we were posting on social media platforms were starting to get throttled and censored. We've had articles on Facebook and Twitter and on Instagram. We've had political posts and political cartoons pertaining to the stories that I just mentioned being completely removed and suppressed. And since the 2016 election, our readership has actually gone down by over 60% because of that. And so we had thought we had made it to this, the standard breaking through the independent media system, and now we're kind of almost back at square one to where we were when we first started MonCrief. Google has been targeting us on a weekly basis. We've been receiving notifications that we are violating their policies for advertising because the posts are too political or the articles are too political, or maybe a picture is showcasing something that that might not be good for advertisers. And so they have been, and then also a lot of our articles that were once appearing on Google News are now also being blocked on Google News as well. And so they're getting us from every single direction in hopes to make us go away financially, especially. And this has been going on since the 2016 election for 2 years now. And although we were not targeted in the 2006, the purge that happened just a couple of months ago, several of our articles and political cartoons were taken down that day. And most recently, and we've actually been at the forefront of looking at who is behind the social media purge, and why Facebook and why Google and why Twitter and Instagram and all of these organizations are pushing for this censorship, because it's been pushing a lot harder in the last 2 years, specifically since the election. And so through our research, we found that several of the very notorious neoconservative people and groups that were targeting us from the very get-go of MonCrief have actually been partnering up with Facebook to target independent and alternative media organizations like the Atlantic Council, like BuzzFeed, and other organizations like Lujan. And these are organizations that are funded wholeheartedly by people that are profiting off of war and who benefit from suppressing, that benefit from people not thinking for themselves because they can push their certain agendas and their narratives. And so most recently, just in the last week, we've uncovered a new project by the neocons that has been launched, and we found ourselves in the crosshairs of them, called NewsGuard. NewsGuard is a follow-up project to the Facebook purge. And I'm, wanted to speak today to share with you guys, I wanted to give that kind of background information that we've been through, but why we should really all take what's happening with NewsGuard very seriously. So NewsGuard now is an organization claiming to be a news rating agency. And they have been making their rounds currently, reaching out to all independent and alternative media organizations, and all organizations in general, but specifically the way they're approaching independent and alternative media organizations, excuse me, I'm a little sick, is that they're targeting us through a questionnaire with very loaded questions, almost ready to frame us as on the political fringe and being unprofessional and untrustworthy. And this is how they contacted me actually just about a week ago. They contacted me with questions, asking us why we didn't caption our photos when all of the photos on our website are captioned. They asked us about our funding, how we're funded, and I can't remember what the exact question was, but the way it was framed was insinuating that we have some sort of hidden agenda and some secret owner at MonCrief, when really all of that information, all the funding and sources is listed on our website, actually on every single page on our website. And so when I got these loaded questions, I thought, this is not an ordinary questionnaire. This is not an ordinary interview. So I pulled in our investigative reporters at MonCrief, and I said, we have to dig a little bit deeper into this organization. They're setting us up for, they're basically setting us up so that we can appear as unprofessional. And having experience with this kind of, attacks that we've received in the past, I knew that a smear or some sort of whatever it was something negative towards MonCrief was on its way. So we dug deep into this organization, NewsGuard, and just as I suspected, the same players that have been targeting MonCrief and other independent media organizations, the same people that have partnered up with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram are behind this organization. The two co-founders, one of them is a longtime Time journalist, and that actually is not even the suspicious part. It's the co-owner, one of the co-owners, who is a former Wall Street executive, and he's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, the American Heritage Foundation, and several other neoconservative think tanks. And not just a member, but like an active advisor to these organizations. The advisory board to NewsGuard includes people like Tom Ridge, who worked for Homeland Security, who developed the whole red, green, whatever terror threat alert system, and NSA directors, other Homeland Security people, CIA directors as well. And so we are looking at a news organization that is now pushing itself out to rank all organizations to become a news ranking agency that's being funded by the very establishment and the very powers that be.
Let's just call it organized crime.
Yeah, the organized crime, like you said.
So
And they are
a news corporation or an intelligence agency basically posing
yes.
as a news corporation.
And I was just about to say that they're claiming to be independent. They claiming to be independent. Yet all of this information that I shared with you is actually on their website.
It's public.
It's all public information. And so what's really interesting about this news ranking system that they're coming up with is that they're not just going to rank us in all news agencies. It's not just about the ranking, but they are actually pushing this ranking system to be integrated into all smartphone devices and all technological devices across the country. And it's being pushed now to be integrated into all public libraries across the United States and all public universities. It has already been launched into the state of Hawaii as part of the public library system. And so this is something that we should all be concerned about, because now it's not just about being suppressed or even being ranked. It's now it's going to be integrated into the very infrastructure of all technological devices that we're all going to be using across the United States. And what's happening now with NewsGuard is that they are in talks. They're working directly with Facebook, with all the social media giants, and soon with Google to have it integrated into those platforms. And so let's say you do get a bad ranking. You will be erased. You will be removed, and you will be pushed at your page 25 instead of at least at the bottom of the first page. Those are just a few examples. And I was going to add something else about how I was hoping today, in coming here, that we could all kind of come together, not just talk about our experiences, but hopefully talk about solutions. Because I know that this is a war that has just begun against independent media. The establishment knows the power of information. They know the power of, when we all get together and unite on common ground, so that we can kind of come up with ideas and to move forward. And that's why they're taking control over information. And so I hope that we can take what I shared with you guys today, because we just broke the story this week, and hopefully we can come up with some sort of tactic or plan on how to move forward, because it really worries me about the future of not just independent journalism, but any kind of information in regards to, you know, the air that we breathe, the toxins, the food that we eat, GMOs, you know, whether it's, you know, organic or whatever, you know, it doesn't matter what industry it is, because all these industries have been consolidated already. But any information that we're seeking that will be better for us, they're going to take control over it. And right now it's starting with NewsGuard. And just to give an example, they've already rated Fox News as green. They've already rated organizations like Voice of America, which is like the Board of Broadcasting Governors, which is funded by the State Department, as a green light. But like giving RT and other alternative organizations the red.
They've already failed Free Thought, and already failed Anti-Media and the Mind Unleashed.
So it's already happening. You guys can find I published the questions they sent me and the responses I sent them on our website on midpressnews.com. And we also have a second article that kind of goes over who they are and who their funders are, who their advisors are, and what their plans are. So something to think about.
Yeah, thank you. We got one person, Mike Heiss, is going to talk from online because he's got to go shortly. So he talked earlier. He's with the Mises Caucus, the Libertarian Party. Let's talk about that. And what Bernard was just talking about, absolutely check out the MonCrief articles, because Whitney Webb did an amazing job looking into all the people behind NewsGuard. It's, you know, it's everything we already know, but if you want the facts to back it up, it's in that article. So we're going to let Mike talk a little bit now. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so, all right, well, first of all, thanks a lot to everybody for putting this together and inviting me and organizing it. I know full well what the chaos of the day of is like, so good job with everything. So I'll just put it out there that while I might be coming from a perspective in my experience within the libertarian community through the Ron Paul campaign, the party, the activist community at large, I think what I have to say really applies to movements of different kinds, whether it's people who were into Bernie or Occupy or whatever. These are kind of some general principles in my opinion and in my experience through the Mises Caucus. So just to give a quick overview from earlier, the Mises Caucus started out as an attempt to reinvigorate the Ron Paul revolution within the Libertarian Party and to aim it at replacing leadership in the party to kind of reorient the direction of the Libertarian Party. And that has now grown wildly in scope as we have created and fostered a community to focusing on local level elections, focusing on ballot initiatives and referendums using single issue coalitions across the aisle, and partnering with the 10th Amendment Center. Now, what I said there is, as far as fostering a community, I think that is the most important thing, because we, both third parties and alternative media outlets, we are in a situation where I don't think the incentives favor us. If we're going to get new converts, we are competing with the mainstream outlets that already have a built-in audience, and they cater to those people's biases and almost manipulate their emotions. So we have to figure out how to flip those incentives. Now, the incentives that they get, as toxic as they may be, from the mainstream is they get that fear and they join each other in that fear to fight the other side. And we just so happen to be in a position where a lot of what we are giving out, either as third parties or as alternative media, can come across as very negative. And so we have to figure out how to flip the incentive on why people would want to join something that might seem largely negative and might be a losing battle. Now, what I mean by that is we focus on, government corruption, or how the state is stealing from us, or how corporations have been corrupted and under the thumb or controlling the government, or any of these things. Now, in my experience in the Ron Paul campaign, even though he didn't win, I think what kept people going, what flipped that incentive for that community, was it kind of ties into what Derick and Sterlin were saying with trust, but not just trust, but hope and faith. And again, he might not have won the nomination, but for that community, every time he got on television and made these, statists look stupid on television, that was a big win for the community. And that motivated them to go out. And that motivated them to stick together and to grow this thing and to go to events and meet each other and foster a community. So I think the question turns into how do we take people who are consumers of our content or believers of our ideas and manifest that into fostering a community. And once you do that, it's easy to kill a campaign or a Facebook page or even a website, but it's much, much harder to kill a community or an organization. So basically, I think the most important things for us are things that are intangible, things like hope, things like motivation. And I think the number one way that you do that is through action. Now, I think me and Ted Metz here are the only people whose project is primarily within the political sphere, so I'm sorry for bringing that evil upon all of you guys. But again, going back to my experience in the Ron Paul campaign, it was the action through that campaign that drove people to have that hope to keep going or to keep growing or keep building. And in fact, a lot of the alternative media was grown in the soil of the post-Ron Paul time frame. So to this end, I had a very interesting experience on election day this year. I went to a polling place and I was shilling for the Libertarian Party and our candidates and giving out literature and all that stuff. And, I live in a 75% plus Democrat voting district, and we also have straight party voting here. So people are very set in their ways. They know what they want already. So while I was able to get rid of it, most people of my literature, most people didn't take it serious. Most people weren't really considering a leap across the aisle. However, on the way back out, those same people that would not take literature from me would give me their email address when I said, "Hey, what do you think about trying to reduce the penalties around, say, marijuana possession here locally?" And all of a sudden, these people who are not ready to leave, let's say, their in-group or their norm in the Democrat Party and the media that caters to them, and but they were going across the aisles on the issues and on localization, bringing it back home. And I think this goes into a lot of what Derick was saying with the freedom cells, because it all starts locally. And through the locality movement, and it also is the same advantage that you get from cryptos, is that it creates this effect through decentralization where everybody wins. What the state does is it sets dictates, and not everybody in the state or the community agrees with those dictates, and so we fight over the power on which one we believe in most. But if we can bring it back decentralized, you kind of get the everybody wins plan where everybody has more control and more say locally, and that plays into the hope. Now, one person, I know some people have pointed out problems with monetization, and I think one of the ways to go about fixing that is, if you aren't already, everything that you output, everything needs to be about email generation. One person who I know personally that is killing it on monetization, where other people might be struggling, is Tom Woods. And he has a lot of materials out there and training guides and tutorials on how he has utilized his marketing to create multiple funnels for email lists. Now, I don't know how high on the prioritization people in this group are doing that. I might be speaking to the choir, but now for the caucus itself, somebody, the last speaker had mentioned that we need to talk about solutions. And I think those solutions need to be funneled into activism, and I think that's where the political machine can come into play. So for us, the scope is going to be, like I said, local election ballot initiatives. And we're going to be partnering with the 10th Amendment Center. Now, if for those of you who don't know what the 10th Amendment Center is, what that is a educational organization that promotes the 10th Amendment's power to the states and localities to nullify unconstitutional laws, which, as we all know, is like 85% plus of them. And really, this is what marijuana legalization is. It's nullification of the feds. And I pointed out earlier that we've already been finding some success with this, and we're not even filed as a PAC yet because there's this organization decriminalized Denver. That is you know, it's all Democrats mostly, and they have been pushing this initiative to decriminalize psilocybin there in Denver. And we got involved. We created this single issue coalition. And what's so good about single issue coalitions is that nobody has to concede anything. All we need to do is essentially respect each other's differences. There might be people who are a little bit more economically on the left in this meeting, and some who are not. And we need to be able to have the conversation where we come together and say, for the purposes of what we're doing, that's okay. You know, and we're just going to take that off the table, and we're not even going to talk about it. So this puts everybody around the issues. And anyway, going back to the 10th Amendment Center, they have a lot of contacts with issue groups from left and right. So what we want to do is we want to serve that space where we can connect those issue groups to action. And the mantra for the Mises Caucus has been a play on words of Ludwig von Mises' book, Human Action, but our tagline is Take Human Action. And I have found that by focusing on not just on content, not just on vision, but actually leading by example through action and offering other people avenues to take it, that it helps to foster this hope in this community. So the last thing I'll say is, now one way that we can expand on this is we need to cross-platform, but not just on social media, but in real life. So, for example, I recently attended the most recent march against the Pentagon. And I went there with the vice chair of the caucus. I went there with John Vives, and Ford Fisher was there. And that was pretty much the entire libertarian contingent in that group. And otherwise, it was people who are more associated with the left. We need to get anti-war people on the left speaking at libertarian events. We need to get people from the libertarian world speaking at anti-war left and start crossing those streams, so that, because otherwise we're putting ourselves in echo chambers where the discussions break down into fights. And I think that is a phenomenon that's been happening more and more ever since, in my experience, the Ron Paul revolution. So I'll leave it at that, but I would like to, if anyone has any questions or ideas on how we can expand on this idea of single issue coalitions or localization.
Hey, thank you, Mike. We're gonna make sure that everybody gets your information as well as everybody else's information on the call once we send a follow-up email.
Awesome.
All right, thank you, brother. All right, so we're gonna continue with I think we got Danny now here first, and we've got Danny, Anita, Eleanor, and then I think at least one more person on the Zoom call that wants to talk. Anybody else, let us know, and then after that, we're gonna move into kind of crunch time, just going back over everything we discussed.
Maybe spin that camera around so I don't have to like walk around and deal with you. I'm probably gonna read a lot of this because I'm not really good at like remembering everything. Too much you might want to go to the mic. First, I just want to thank everybody for being here. Like really, everybody in this room, I think, deserves a round of applause. I love every one of you for the work that you've done, what you've put in, for the effort that you spend every day into building this industry up to what it is. I mean, I can't have enough admiration for every single one of you. A lot of, no matter what you do, like each and every one of our own individual perspectives, I think we have a lot of things that we can agree on. And mainstream media sucks. Fucking government is corrupt. Society is a lie. Like, journalism is shit. It's a propaganda network for the military-industrial complex and pharmaceutical companies and selling old people my pillows and Propecia pills and shit. So we know that. We've come to these conclusions. No matter what you do, there is a common theme within all of us, and that's freedom, right? The right to feel safe and have free speech. I'm going to talk a little bit about, well, what I have to talk about is a lot about what we talk about a lot in this, Gorse anarchist community is decentralization and diversification. So we need to decentralize where our outreach is. If we're all on Facebook or if we're all on Instagram, we need to diversify our social network presence. It's like, I can describe it as an octopus has 9 brains. In case he loses an arm, he's fine. You know, we need to make sure that Facebook takes us down. We have email marketing, we have text messages, we have several other social networks and our own website, right? So we have all these diversified avenues of content distribution, so they can't just attack us on one. And then diversification of our income. That's another thing. We can't have all our income coming from one central source because it's the same exact problem. Like they can attack that source of our income and we're done. And you know, in this room full of people, that's another thing I'll get into is, so a lot of us, this is a business. This is how we feed our kids. This is how we pay for our mortgage, our rent. This isn't just a hobby to us. This is our career. This is our livelihoods. There's really, I know for me personally, there's no separation anymore between my job and my life. My life is my job. They're intertwined with each other. The modernization of our economic models, I think, is important. I think some of us are still kind of getting used to the idea that funneling people to our website with red content or Taboola or any of these ad distribution networks, it's just not going to work as an income model for us anymore. So we need to adapt to new income models as they come. One that I think is really important is the live streams. We all need to be live streaming, whether you have a podcast, whether you have a long form radio show, whether you like have a lead camp show or act out. I know a lot of us have these kind of shows. That's important. I think it's important to integrate super chats and the ability to be able to interact with us. One thing I was thinking earlier with what Ford does a lot of live streaming, you know, riots and protests that are happening in Washington, D.C. A big thing on the Twitch platforms and a lot of these live stream platforms is text-to-speech. There's no reason we don't have a text-to-speech interface while we're out there on the field with people who can give $2 to as much as they can donate to ask us a question or to say, hey, look over there. Hey, what's this? Or what do you think about this? Like, people enjoy paying for that interface. And it saves us the time of having to keep checking, you know, Facebook live stream. What are they saying? What are they saying? Just give them that option and pay that $2. Like, those platforms are there. And that can work for a lot of us in the field to, again, build community with the people and also give them a platform to contribute and can feel rewarded. That's another thing that I'm going to talk about a lot is, you know, the donation avenues are there, the Patreon, the crowdsource avenues are there, but a lot of people want to feel fulfilled, they want to feel rewarded in what they're donating to. So I want to talk a little bit about the economics and capitalism. I know there's a lot of condemnation on what capitalism is and stuff like that, and to me, it's not important what your preferred economic ism is or where you fit on the economic spectrum. What's important to me is that it's free. It's free of coercion and it's free of force and it's done with voluntarism. So no matter where it's voluntarily donated or if it's voluntarily bought or exchanged, that's fine as long as there's no force there. So nobody's doing it under a gun or under force of economic oppression or all these things. There's never been a more important time than right now to point out the flaws in mainstream media and to undermine brand loyalty and legacy media brands. And I think, Menard, you've done an amazing job of that over the year, being able to show that mainstream media are all fucking hypocrites. Every single article they put out against the alternative media is 99% of the time something that they themselves do. They're completely beholden to their fucking advertisers, the people who pay their bills, whether it's government or private entities, and they craft articles and propaganda completely geared towards that. And then they attack us like, oh, well, they're funded by this person, or, you know, Russia might give them this much money, and they're like, yeah, they're the same thing. So it's very important that we collectively, especially in times where it's clear and obvious that there's a bias against the story, you know, like WikiLeaks, for example, that we point that out to the audiences, to the people who care about news. Traditional advertising, I was talking about before about these advertising content curator companies. I don't think traditional advertising is dried up per se, but I think we need to reestablish advertising relationships, right? So we're probably not going to get to advertise for Coca-Cola and these legacy brands. Legacy brands are going to stick with the legacy media channels. But there's a lot of up-and-coming big Uber and these companies and corporations that are coming up in the holistic industry. Ryan talked about this a lot, that are willing to make partnerships and deals with us. I think it's very important that we embrace that opportunity to advertise for corporations, brands, and services that identify with our personal identity and our brands and our ethics and integrity. Because a lot of the problems people have with where journalism gets their funding from boils down to the integrity of those sources. So if we can maintain those integrity and those relationships with what these services do, if they're positive and holistic, then there's really nothing that they can say. The big companies, the legacy companies' allegiances with advertisers are not as conscious as we think. As soon, in my opinion, as the average news consumer, the 57 to 70-year-old person watching CNN and Fox News starts to die off, and they can no longer get, $24 to $140 per 1,000 people that they're getting in front of on TV or whatever that CPM. As soon as their market dries up, those advertisers are going to look for attention. And where's that attention going to be? It's not going to be on CNN. It's not going to be on Fox. It's not going to be on, any of these old political network cable news shows. It's going to be on us. There's one advantage that we have, especially a lot of us in this room, is that we are young. We're hip. We are the fashionable media industry, right? The fashionable news industry. We're not fucking fake. We're not fake hipsters like this. You know what I mean? We're the real hipsters, swagged out. We got to, whatever you want to call it. We have to stay with the times. And the kids, when the kids who are in high school now do start to grow up and care about their world, they're not going to look to Don Lemon to tell them. That's just a fact. It's kind of scattering around a lot in this little bit. I don't want to wrap up though. Huh? Yes, sir. This is back. Yeah, give me a minute, bro. Activism is entertainment. Eleanor, Derick, Lenore, you guys know this. You're fucking rock stars. You know what I mean? There's definitely a market for people to be inspired by those who are living the lives that they want to live. And there's a lot of young people, not even in high school, but 20-somethings who are stuck in dead-end jobs or stuck in college listening to their parents, and they look at people getting shot at standing around like, wow, that's fucking awesome. I'm just saying, there's a market there for people who have always wanted to live vicariously through others. That's a big part of why we donate to churches. That's a big part of why we donate to these SPCAs and things like that, or wildlife foundations. We want to feel like we're taking part of something that's bigger than us. We're caught up in our daily jobs and the 9-to-5s and taking care of our families. But if we can show ourselves fixing and changing the world and doing these things in the world, people have no problems contributing because they can take a part of it and they feel like they're actually contributing. And that's important that we take advantage of that. It's important this year that we be frugal. I think we all know right now is not the economic opulence it was during the steam rise and the crypto boom. We were all like, yeah, throwing money. But this year is not going to be the time for that. It's really time right now that we save money. We don't spend on opulent things. We don't spend a lot of money in our own personal vices and wants, and we invest in ourselves. We invest in the media. We consolidate our resources together for projects like this. We need to take some responsibility in our economic presence right now because it is kind of a scarcity, but it waxes and wanes. With every scarcity is an abundance. So this might teach us to take the economic principles in line and do the things that we need to do to grow ourselves out of this. And in a year or two, we might have a lot more confidence and control than we do right now. 4 minutes at the most. I got a lot, dude. I got a lot.
We still got a lot to cover, and I know your points are.
I don't know how many of you guys have seen Jurassic Park. Whatever it is, Jurassic Park reference. In the movie Jurassic Park, they were talking about the velociraptors, right? And the velociraptors kept slamming into the electric fence. This is stupid, but bear with me. They said the velociraptors are really smart, right? Because they kept testing for a weakness. And I think that's one thing that we need to do in this community is that it's not people anymore, it's these algorithms. And these algorithms can be outsmarted by human ingenuity and by, well, what would we say,
Innovation.
not innovation, but when a whole bunch of people come together, like a Reddit investigation, where you have these crowdsourced. What is it? We can defeat the algorithm.
Collective consciousness.
We all collectively try different things, right? If we continue to each individually, repetitively try different ways to outsmart the algorithm, eventually one will work. And that's what's happened historically, is we'll catch this new way to do things, and then we'll all be able to use that, and then they'll catch on and shut that down, and that process will just keep repeating.
Be the velociraptor with anything. So I'll make sure we get everybody on the call.
All right, I didn't even talk about crypto.
He's taking notes as all of us are talking.
We still have one more song, so make sure that reads.
I think cryptocurrency is real important, right? In regards to censorship protection. So let's talk about anybody who's in the crypto community kind of understands that decentralized data encryption is going to allow our content to never be scrubbed, which is an advantage unlike we've never seen in journalism before. And I guess to wrap it all up, and we can talk more later. I have so much more that I can say on all this stuff. Is decentralized. Let's talk about solutions. I'll get to solutions, and that's all right. Is that good? All right. Decentralize and diversify your social networks. You know, Meet the Mind, Steam, Freedom Cells, Busy. There's 100 new social networks popping up every day. The Paul brothers started on Vine. Vine got shut down. Now they make $1 million a year on YouTube. The advantage of being on these new platforms is you never know when they're going to catch fire, and you have it. It's easier to create a following on a new platform than to establish a following in an already existing. This year, Instagram influencers are expected to make up to $10 billion this year on Instagram, just being an influencer. Alternative media wire service, blockchain. I think what's most important though is that we put, actions are more important than words right now. And we can all stand here and talk about things and come up with these solutions, but what's most important is when we go home on Monday, we start to enact these solutions. We start to take what we've learned and talked about here today and take the inspiration we gained from this event and actually put it into practical effort and application. And that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. Awesome.
Provided the best service ever, which was laughter. Right? That's the one thing we all have to do. We laugh and enjoy life.
It was like activism and a comedy show.
That was fucking amazing. That was my favorite one today. Yours was awesome too.
All right, we have Anita now. She's going to share with us.
Hi guys, I'm Anita MonCrief. First of all, I would like to thank Derick and Jason. Getting this many introverts in one room is pretty freaking amazing, so thank you. I want to talk a little bit about my background, some observations, and some possible solutions that I'm working on my end and see how I can get some ideas from you guys. As I stated in my intro, I started my organizing career working with Acorn. Started working on their projects in Washington, D.C. That was back in 2005. I helped them take over the House in 2006. Was there when Nancy Pelosi took the stage as Speaker of the House. I am still embarrassed by all of these actions, but I came forward in 2008 to expose the corruption that I saw with the Democrats, how they were using the minority community to basically as a shield for their illegal behavior, and I became a darling of the right. And from there, I started going around and speaking and talking about the things that I knew. I eventually ended up working with the Koch brothers in their organization called Americans for Prosperity. They built a program that when I left was probably about $20 million training program where we went around the country and we trained activists on how to connect. During that time, I thought that I was working within the system to change it. I built a training program that focused on coalitions, consensus, personal stories, reaching out to people. But all of that started to change in 2016 when I saw how that very program that I had helped create was being used to divide the country. And so I got out of politics. And from a person that would go to the Coke donor meetings and sit there and talk about these great ideas and have people say, oh, we want to give you money to do this stuff, it was very disheartening. I was really frustrated with the whole system. But around that time, I started looking around and I was seeing that there were some things that were happening in places like Flint, Michigan. Now, before I left the Americans for Prosperity, I started a program where we were going down there with a group of activists that had already been working. A lot of them were anonymous, and they were coming together, bringing in water every single month and trying to figure out a way to deal with the poison, the lead-tainted water in Flint. So through that, I had anarchists, I had anonymous, I had conservatives, Democrats, Republicans, and whatever, coming there for a single issue. They weren't fighting, they weren't waving their fingers, they were actually starting to talk and learn stuff about each other. We even had an event that we gave out school supplies, and I had a lady that's very Christian conservative, and she was hanging out with some of my friends that were atheists or whatever, but I got to see that there was something beyond politics, beyond left and right. Fast forward a couple of years, and in 2017, I started working with Andrew on hurricane relief. So from Harvey to Florida to Puerto Rico, what I started to see is that there is a connection between the stuff that we're doing right now and how this, and I'm sorry, I'm nervous, you have to excuse me, that whole introvert nature is coming out. But I started to see a connection between getting people together on the issues, not the political issues, but the stuff that matters in the communities. When you look at these communities, especially Puerto Rico, the government failed them, the mainstream media failed them, the nonprofit industrial complex failed them. So we created a different model in Puerto Rico. Andrew and I weren't working with any organization when we went down there and started doing our core work. We were helping other small nonprofits, not Red Cross, not the Salvation Army, but the groups that were community-led. From there, living with the communities, we started talking about some of the things that we believed in. And this was only highlighted this past year in Florida. After the Hurricane Michael, we were in a community that was poor. We were living with the people. Most nonprofits, they come in and they're on the sidelines. They're above the folks. They're helping. There's a very big distinction between the haves and the have-nots. But when you're living with the people and you're living by example, you start to do something that I learned at the Harvard Kennedy School from Obama's mentor, a man named Marshall Gantz, is that public narrative, that personal story is what connects us all. Part of the program I built with the Americans for Prosperity talked about that. It was people connecting through stories. When you look at what happened, Proposition 8 back in California, it was way back when, gay marriage. They did a study where they had the same people that were on this side and that side. They brought them together and they started telling their personal stories, why they believed what they believed. So they went back years later and they talked to those people and they realized that that personal connection actually changed people's belief for the long term. Not the media, not any of the stuff that people were putting out there, but their connection, their story, them talking to Jason or talking to you or whatever, it changed them. So what I saw in Florida is that when you're living with the people and you start talking about the things that matter to you, people start to look into it. We have folks talking about the law of attraction. We have people watching Mark Passio's videos. So what I'm trying to do now is we're going back to Puerto Rico and we're also working with more nonprofits, not as one big group, but is helping individual nonprofits achieve their mission. Most of them are community focused. Most of them are led by people that care. So if you actually want to bring in, it's not about sometimes just the Facebook post. It's about creating a new audience, and that means pointing out the deficiencies in the system. You think the Puerto Rican people don't understand that the media and the government have failed them? What about Flint, Michigan? We just found out that New Jersey has lead in their water too. These are people that understand that all the things that we're fighting against right now are not working for them. So there needs to be an intersection between nonprofits, activists, and the humanitarian world. The disasters aren't going to stop, whether it's lead or a hurricane or earthquake or a fire in California. We have a unique opportunity now to pull together a whole new subset of people that are watching our content because they're experiencing the very things that we're talking about, but we haven't had an opportunity to reach them. Not everyone's going to be the person that lives, sleeps on the floor and eats out of a can, but they can work with Derick, they can work with Jason. So part of the projects that we're doing is not only expanding the Puerto Rico project, we're also launching and this is fully funded as of yesterday, so I can talk about this. We're launching a scholarship program where we're going to be looking for filmmakers and we're going to send them to film school. The only caveat is that they have to come back and work in the communities. They have to tell some of the stories of the people that are doing this. So we'll be announcing this at Sundance Film Festival coming up in a couple of weeks. And this is part of the process. Taking these people that are naturally activists who have an artistic lean and then putting them in the communities to tell the story. We also want to start having better conferences. I can't tell you how many douchey conferences happen in Puerto Rico where they come in and they eat food in the nice resort area and they talk about the people. And that's where all the money goes. I would love to have a conference where the money that you guys spend is not on a conference hall, it's not on anything fancy. We got a place for everyone to sleep. You come out there and you work the projects in the community. You talk to the community leaders. Those are the best experts. That's how you get the most representation too. A lot of these conferences are sometimes, and I hate to say it, monochromatic. And we have to be able to bring in more experiences. So you do that by not saying this is the person that always speaks on the issue, but by saying, let me go get the person that lives the issue. And let's go talk to them. Let's stop having the conferences where we talk at the people that we're trying to help. So those are some of the things that are rambling around in my head. I would love to get some feedback and probably see what you guys are working on, because part of what I'm doing right now, like I said, is floating between groups and organizations, seeing where we can take our expertise and work together.
I want to add to what you for sure. She does a lot of great work, and one thing that I'm already hearing just as an idea for everybody to connect with her. So there's some disaster that goes on. She's the type of person, and Andrew as well, that are on the front lines out there trying to do relief work, right? Well, they need activists to come help them, and we got activists on the ground. They need journalists to promote it and to write about it. Like, we've got everything we need here within these networks. So more collaboration is key to getting those stories out.
Also paint our organizations, our journalist organizations in a positive light by showing,
we're covering the stories that they're ignoring.
It's good all around. It's all part of advocacy.
Oh, can I add one more thing? I would love to see Nick and Jason and other people down there, because not only, like you said, does it promote them, it also gives that personal touch that you guys were talking about earlier, because they see your face in the community. They know why you're writing the stories you're writing. Thank you.
All right, so we got Eleanor.
Cool, so mine's gonna be kind of short, and I'm bad to follow Anita because she's such a badass. But yeah, so part of what I want to talk about is how important it is to make those connections on a local level, because that's not only where you get the content, viewers and readers that are important to all of us, but that's actually how you get change. And I think we're all here today because we all want to actually change things, not support the status quo, which is what corporatized media would like to do. So I think that's really important as well. And I also wanted to speak really quickly. I don't know if Bill spoke, but I was working with a couple of other folks, like Emma, on something called the Minds Shift. And basically that was a shift towards Minds. And I'm not up here to say that Minds is perfect. I know that it's not. I don't think a perfect platform exists. But the idea being that Minds is new enough, that it's malleable, that we can throw ideas out to Bill, like he's obviously accessible. On top of that, it's open source, so if there's some fuckery going on, we can look at the code and be like, hey, that's not cool. And on top of that as well, it's not an ultimatum. We're not saying you have to delete your Facebook account. And that's something that I want to address as well. I don't think that that's a good ultimatum to throw out there, because people, a quarter of the world's population uses Facebook. It's been deemed too big to delete, and for good reason. People are going on there even if they know that they're being surveilled, because they're like, yeah, I want to see what my friend ate for dinner, or I want to see like a picture of my niece or whatever. And I think it's important that we say, okay, that's cool, as long as you know what you're giving up by going on Facebook. But we should also be working on shifting the paradigm so that it's not where people look for news. And so that people understand that I can go on Facebook for entertainment, but my news comes from etc. I think Ford's point to some sort of national association of independent journalists is a great idea, and building other platforms, that Nick talked about, that we have control over, so that we're not always just waiting for that third party to pull the rug out from under us is really important. And also the concept of respecting differences is also really important. And I think that, speaking to what Anita mentioned, when you're on the ground in these communities, the politics, the theory kind of falls away. And I'm a political theory nerd, but that shit doesn't matter when you're trying to figure out how to get water, when you're trying to figure out how to fight this pipeline company or etc. That is not important. What's important is how we can work together and how we can get those stories pedestaled and beyond the iron wall of the corporatized media. And I think with regards to that, I am absolutely down to work with anybody and everybody as long as you have the basic respect for my right to exist and everybody's right to exist. You're either for all of the oppressed or none of the oppressed. And so as long as we can agree on that, then I'm absolutely down to work with everybody. And if you're vigilant in the work that you do, that you don't take it from hearsay, you don't take it from some sort of conspiracy that you read somewhere, but that you get actual first-hand information. And that's another thing that's why it's so important to talk to folks on the ground and get to those frontline fights if you can, because that's where you'll get the lived experience of people, and you don't have to take people's word for it, and you don't have to just assume that this is what's going on because it happened before or because you have a distrust of the government. So I think in terms of that, I just want to say real quick in terms of wrapping up, again, the mind shift thing, I believe Lee posted a link to that group that we have on Mind Shift that's for other media and content creators like all of you, and I'll repost that if there's some sort of link list that we'll be sending out. And basically so that we can, it's called reminding, but the idea of reposting on Minds, so that we can post our work and then people can repost it and sort of fill Minds with that content. And so that people can get this feeling that, oh, I go to Minds and then there's, as soon as I log in, there's this long list of alternative media content creators that are putting out all this information that I no longer have access to on Facebook because of filter bubbles and algorithms. So that's it for me.
Should all our energy, or at least made Minds, be like that place for alternative media? I mean,
Yeah, it's awesome.
everybody in this room, there's like at least, what, 20 million fans between all of us? Like, those people are looking for this information, like I was saying earlier. You know, it's demand, it can't be deleted. So if we did shift that over to Minds, let's say, for instance, I mean, personally, I think that's the best, but that would be the place where people would go to find that type of information. So I think
Yeah, part of the reason why a lot of us exist as media personalities, businesses, or whatever, is because people got tired of being kind of force-fed the news, right? And like, that's what they were getting on TV, and so that's why internet news became such a big industry. And now Facebook has kind of rolled that back to now, once again, we're being force-fed by the algorithm, right? And so, you made a great point. It's like, we should, that is a narrative that we should push, is that Facebook is no longer a trustworthy place for news. Right. Because they're only giving you what they're supposed to be allowed to give you now. And so if we are able to if we're able to convince Bill to help us set up a news section on Minds, I mean, that would be a great narrative to push out. Look, Facebook, you can see your friends' pictures of their kids, and you can see your cousins and all that stuff. But for news, it's like we're going to start going on Minds or somewhere else, or I think that would be a pretty good narrative for sure.
We're gonna let Gavin chime in here and continue our discussion. I think, yeah, that you did make a key point there, Eleanor, that like if they're already telling people online that Facebook is not the place to look for news, you shouldn't trust them on Facebook, well then let's take the news off Facebook, put it somewhere.
I mean, they're already, the mainstream media is kind of already doing some of the work, heavy lifting for us, right? They're already saying, oh, Facebook is, the fake news narrative and all that stuff, that they're already doing some of that legwork. So now we just have to hijack that narrative and just say, okay, yeah, Facebook isn't trustworthy, this is where we're gonna go for trustworthy news. I think that could be a narrative that's worth hijacking for sure.
You ready, Gavin?
Yo, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Mic check. Okay, cool. All right, lots of really, really good points made. I thought Anita's presentation in particular was very good. I wanted to just remark on a couple of things. The first, and I'm not trying to sound like a played out record, but Derick originally mentioned it and a lot of people then expanded upon it, and I wholeheartedly agree, is that sometimes we can let our personal egos kind of get in the way of unifying. And don't get me wrong, our individualism is definitely, it's a strength. That's one of the reasons why we haven't conformed to this backward system. And essentially, non-conformity is what always results in the changes needed in society. So it is a strength, but it can also debilitate us if we try to create unity. And that's been the fundamental difference, I mean, really, if you think about it, between the common people, or us, and the ruling class, right? In spite of their differences, like if you look at, let's say, the Saudi elitists and the Western elitists, on the surface, they are completely different. But through mutual cooperation and mutual desires, they work together. Their common interests are for greed, for exploitation, for corrupt bullshit, right? So even though we have some differences, we also have huge commonalities that are much greater than the common things that they share, which is all of us, what binds us is our sense of integrity, is our sense of justice. It's the one to proliferate the truth and to essentially oppose corruption. So we need to rely on that. And that's also something that the common people throughout the world share. They can see the system's corrupt. I mean, we can see what's going on in France right now. And I can tell you also in South Africa and all over the world, people feel the same way. They're sick and tired of the corrupt bullshit. But if we're going to get people to join us in solidarity by focusing instead not so much on surface politics and labels, etc., like what cause do you stand for, but instead in solidarity of justice, truth, integrity, and helping to create a better world, like Anita was saying, to get all of these different people together because they have the common thread of humanity. That's what we all share. So in order to facilitate that, we have to first do that amongst ourselves before we can even get anybody else involved. So I think whoever, I can't remember who mentioned it, but an official coalition, some kind of a sense of official coalition is a brilliant idea, because the ruling class, the way they started also was with seemingly small, inconsequential meetings. And then it snowballed into the creation of the world that we have today. The way I look at it in terms of historical context is, even though this is a seemingly small meeting, it's actually massive. This is a marker. This is a game changer, because now we are basically putting in the blueprints for future generations to build upon. So we have to pursue this further and come up with like an official coalition of some sort where we stand together. Now, in terms of the historical context, this really is unprecedented if we think about it. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the Protestant Reformation, for example. I'm not trying to give you a history lesson yet. But the Protestant Reformation was one of the biggest revolutions in human history. Essentially what took place was a lot of the common people, for the first time ever, they challenged the authority of the papacy and the Roman Catholic Church, and then they rose up against them. Now, the way this was facilitated was first through a revolution in information sharing, which was Johannes Gutenberg's printing press. That made that possible. Similar, we know with Gary Webb, for example, with the San Jose Mercury News, his story, which was unprecedented as well at the time, where he found that the CIA was complicit in the drug trade and the crack epidemic in the United States. The reason why that was made possible is because he utilized the internet to get his story online. He said they were getting like 1 million hits a day, and that was back when the internet was not a really big thing. So again, it was an information sharing revolution. Right now, we're living in the greatest information sharing revolution in known history. So naturally, and I know it's a bold fucking statement to make, but we are in the midst of the greatest revolution in human history, in spite of what they may show us on the establishment media. And you and me are at the forefront of that. I mean, that shit is mind-blowing when you stop to consider it. Now, with that, however, comes also the serious responsibility that we embody what we believe in to the best of our ability. So integrity, justice, truth. Because as we know, for the people that studied the Occupy movement or were involved with it, they listed us as, because back then I was living in the United States, now I'm in South Africa, but they listed us as being potential domestic terrorist threats. That shit's crazy, obviously. And we know that we are just normal people trying to make the world a better place. But if they are willing to put those labels on that nonviolent movement, and I would imagine that they are well aware of this movement right now, and that we are much, much more serious than a lot of the people that were involved with that, just out of pure frustration, I would imagine that they are going to try to create division. They are going to look for any ammo that they can use against us. So as a result, we have got to try to be very mindful of what we are putting out there. Because what we represent is really what can either come back and bite us in the arse, or what can draw people to us. So never call for violence, never give them any kind of a justification to essentially dismiss what we are doing. The other thing that I just wanted to mention here was the fact that I know it's been very difficult what we are doing for all of us. I mean, I'm in a financial bind at the moment, and I'm sure many of you are as well. And there's days where the shit is just very discouraging, and it feels overwhelming. But I always remind myself, like, even though this is difficult, think about all of the truth seekers and speakers that came before us, and they literally sacrificed their lives for us to be where we are today, to create a better world, Gary Webb included. And that gives me the inspiration I need to keep on moving forward. Because throughout this, we have to keep this strong. We have to keep ourselves inspired to continue. What I actually specialize in doing, in many ways, is to help people keep their minds strong. So if anybody needs help with that, just contact me. And I know it might sound corny or cliche, but that's how it works. The change has got to start with yourself. We've got to learn how to deal with our inner demons so that we can be proficient in dealing with the outer demons. Lastly, I just want to explain that what I consider after today, and I mean, I always did. I'm a massive learner, and I know we're all individuals. But the time is right now. We have got to unite in one sense or another. And I consider every single one of you to be my tribe. I stand with you. I salute you. I've got the greatest degree of respect for all of you. And I know together, if we can keep strong, if we can keep positive, we can create a better world. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And again, I salute all of you.
Thank you, Gavin, brother. Thank you. Yeah, I think all of us would second everything Gavin said, especially at the end as far as, you know, and this may be out of the scope of what we're doing today, but I think at the end of the day, we all know that there's an internal battle as much as a physical battle going on with what we're dealing with. So thank you for that, Gavin. I think we're trying to get Bill back on the call, see if he wants to say anything.
Email, haven't heard anything back.
So we'll see. He's not. He was on earlier, but I will say, I don't know if you guys heard this earlier. Bill was in the chat earlier, and I asked him about scheduling, and he said that's coming. He said live video is coming through mine. So he did confirm a few different things, saying like we're working on this.
Yeah, and actually, I sent Bill a long list of things that I had pulled from a bunch of different content creators that they wanted to see on Minds. But again, Bill is super open to these ideas, so scheduling is definitely one of them. Easier ways to search people, to be able to build groups and to access groups. There's a long list of things, and it's a growing list, and he's addressing all of those, so he's super open to these ideas. So you can get in touch with him either via Minds, or you can even reach out to me and I can forward it. So.
Also, Minds just got $6 million in funding, their previous funding round, so they have some momentum in their corner. They're spending most of that on coding and programming, so they're trying to facilitate some of the features and functions Facebook has, and that's a huge undertaking, but that will make it that much more valuable to users who aren't necessarily us, you know, in this niche.
We've got about an hour and 15 minutes or so left here today, and first off, I mean, just thank you guys all for coming out here. When we were first really tossing this idea around, like I said, this was talked about years ago, but after the purge, Jason and I just got together and we're like, dude, we either do it now or nothing. You know, it's either now or nothing, because I think we all realize that if we don't start coming together, and everybody's been re-emphasizing this, then going forward, things are going to be even more difficult. If we can't even just reach out to each other because we've been purged from the internet, or the next level, which most of us haven't faced yet, is where they're actually going after your domain server or your ISP and saying, this is, you know, hate, or this is, you know, fake news, you shouldn't host it anymore. We haven't got quite to that point, but those are also solutions that we need to talk about as far as decentralizing the whole internet itself, and that's a bigger issue, but those are things to be concerned about. But anyways, we realized that this is the time to do it. Either we come together, or, you know, who knows what's going to happen. And I'm very thankful that you all spent the time, the money, and the energy to come out here, because as you all know, we didn't offer to pay anybody to be here or to cover anybody's thing. You know, it just wasn't in the budget. But please do give a thank you to Jason. He covered all the costs for renting this place, the donuts, the, you know. Yeah,
Looks like we're cops in here.
So we're really thankful to everybody who's played their role, and we all understand the importance, I think, of why we're here. So I think these are the 5 kind of themes that seem to be coming up, and I'm just going to go through them one by one, and feel free to speak out. They can hear us fairly clearly, I think. But yeah, do try to speak up, or if you feel like you want to address them directly, come over here. But obviously, this has been emphasized over and over. The idea of creating a new type of hub or a newswire, an indie newswire which would basically be an RSS feed of all of our feeds to one central feed that people could get everything through, and maybe some type of association that backs it up with this sort of national indie, whatever name. This is irrelevant, the name right now. But that is something that obviously there's an interest here. I mean, can I get just a show of hands on who thinks that's probably worth pursuing? I think at that point, yeah, okay. So obviously that's got to be one of the first steps that we start moving towards. And as a part of that, I'm just going to throw that Aaron brought this out. So imagine we've got this national coalition, right? And as to be a part of this, it doesn't necessarily, like when you say I'm joining the indie, Writers of America group, whatever, right? It's not an endorsement of everybody else that's also a part of that, right? So we could have some sort of phrasing that's like we've come together, we're all focused on these particular things: anti-censorship, pro-free speech, anti-war, whatever. But there's obvious differences in the way we report and the things we report. So not necessarily an endorsement of each other, but let's say tomorrow we find out the anti-media has been purged, right? Everybody else who was in this mutual defense agreement, our little NATO, right, among the alternative media, everybody who's partner that agrees, like, hey, anti-media got taken down. So then the Free Thought runs a press release about it, or he puts something up on Instagram. I do a video about it. Eleanor does. Everybody who chooses to come to the aid of those within our coalition can broadcast it across their platform to get that message out. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be like somebody got purged. What if we're all like, this is a story that we need to get this out across all our platforms, or this activist just went, whatever it may be that we think it needs to be shipped through all the networks. But of course, it would be voluntary and on each network to then, with their own discernment, decide, yeah, I don't know if that's really our issue or not, or this is something we definitely want to get behind. That's just, that's where we've been so far with the discussion. And everybody, please put in ideas. Where do we start? How do we make that happen?
Can I make one comment on the newswire? So first of all, I think the association of the newswire should be a part of the association. I think it should be a function of it. And you mentioned that like part of the newswire will be aggregating from all of our associates, all the content our associates make. It'll come aggregated to all of us as like an RSS feed. And I think we should definitely have an agreement where anyone else could use the content that comes out on the feed. But the news feed could also go the other way, where the association itself can make short, brief, breaking news stories too, where we can put a news story out on the newswire, and then everyone in our network has access to a breaking story. So within 5 minutes of a story breaking, it can be up on everybody's website, and we can have a plugin for WordPress or some other type of plugin that we could automate the whole process. The title, the image, the whole article, and everything can be published right away automatically. No one even has to go through and edit it, because our association already has editors, fact checkers, and all that stuff taken care of.
Just like the AP does right now.
Exactly. So what I'm talking about here is we could have maybe 10 or 20 stories a day coming out through our newswire that's going to populate all of our websites, and all of our platforms can have constant sources of original news content, which will be basically our content. And then if you want your writers to add some opinion into the newswire and stuff, so you can take the newswire, you can turn it into a big long form article too. This is a function that could, the newswire goes back and forth. We create our own content, it all gets shared together, and then the newswire creates content for all of us to have for our website.
So the newswire itself, or whatever this organization, would have its own writers as well. Or you're talking about writers from different outlets, like
that too. That some writers from our outlets, if we have part-time writers and stuff, they could get work as staff writers for the newswire too.
Or video creators.
Well, not even about, like, when I was at Standing Rock, I was relaying information to both Minar and to Nick, like, just over the phone, like, hey, this is what's going down, and we're typing it up as quick as possible, or relaying that. Like, those are the kind of things that would go right on the newswire, like, hey, Standing Rock, being rated, journal, whatever it is, right? And then those things get pushed out for everybody else.
A lot of the work you've done, and a lot of the work Aaron's done, we've already proved that this kind of thing works. We've done it kind of unofficially. Just kind of, I know you've helped send Derick out, I've helped send Derick out to Minar. The Mind Unleashed, we've all kind of pitched in, like, yeah, everyone pitched in $50 and send Derick out to Standing Rock. If we made it kind of official, it would just give us so much like original content and direct on the ground reporting and stuff. Like, we would be outperforming the AP in many aspects, because we've been covering a lot of the stuff that they just, like, those guys didn't even show up to Standing Rock until like way late, like 3 weeks late, you know, they were 3 weeks after you were there, you know what I mean? Like, it was you could beat them on a lot of fronts with this kind of stuff.
So there's an agreement for something like that, right? So where's the first place that the conversation, we continue conversation about this, like, or how do, you know, where does that start?
Discord server for this all.
Communication there.
I think a Discord server would be like a great idea for
Discord? Is anybody here already regularly use Discord or familiar with Discord? No. A few people?
Well, I was gonna suggest that
something like that.
to get off the ground, perhaps a private Facebook group where we all become members and can interact to build this platform.
Something like that, but Facebook can monitor that and look at that and they can see us.
Oh, right, okay,
So Telegram is pretty good.
Yeah, something like that.
Telegram, anybody use Telegram? Because this is, personally, when it comes to communicating with people, I'm sick of joining new apps, platforms and stuff.
On Telegram, is it like WhatsApp where like you could kind of swipe to like comment directly to a comment? Because you know, like when you get a whole bunch of messages and you're trying to comment, it could get buried in it. Like WhatsApp, you could kind of swipe right on a direct comment, so when you're writing, it's addressing the comment that you're writing to.
Things
so
get
we're not
lost
like,
in
what the
Telegram
fuck you're
because
talking
people
about.
keep talking while you're gone, you're 100 messages back.
So
And
WhatsApp,
That's what
I'm
makes
saying,
Discord
WhatsApp,
better. It's
Yeah,
almost that
Discord is a
separate
little more
different
organized.
topics.
Okay,
And
cool.
Facebook only WhatsApp.
Yeah, and Facebook, yeah, I think Telegram's what's
And all the crypto companies are on Discord, you know.
I know they own them, but I just want clear communication. I want to respond to specific comment, not like 15
So I agree with
other.
you. So
That's
are people willing to look into Discord and potentially use it? Like if we create a channel, I send out a follow-up email and say, hey guys, this is where we're gonna continue conversation for this specific aspect, Newswire, new association hub type thing.
And then we get developers involved, probably Slack.
And then from there, yeah, we can start, you know, that whole thing can be built out, but we just need somewhere to go from, because we're not gonna get it all solved today, but if we have some meeting place to continue this conversation.
I'll build this.
What is it? That would be something Ryan would help with.
Say it again.
That's something Ryan would help with.
Mine's, yes.
Mine's partnership can seal that.
I think that might be.
Well, I mean,
They need a chat anyway.
we could create a group on Minds and just start there. I mean, honestly, like that's, they already have, you have like a mind shift group there. We could just create a group there and that would encourage everybody here who hasn't experimented with Minds yet to go start getting familiar with the platform.
That's a good idea.
I mean, do y'all want to do that?
Yeah.
Start a Minds group? Okay, that sounds like some progress. So the second thing, and again, just feel free to interrupt me, I just want to make these points that the other point that keeps getting brought up is the migration to alternative platforms, right? So there are differences of opinion of whether or not you should still be on Facebook or Instagram, but I think ultimately everybody agrees that staying on Facebook and Instagram and the traditional ones alone and doing nothing else is not a good idea. So if you're gonna stay there, then that's fine, but as Eleanor was saying, like maybe moving your work and letting people know that like, well, the content's gonna be on Minds or Instagram or whatever other channels are.
In every aspect of life, you have to do that.
And I think it's quite clear, like there's others out there and we've all looked at them or talked about them or seen other people talk about them. It's pretty clear though, the one that we have the best access to is Minds.
Yeah.
The CEO of the company is willing to get on a Skype call and talk to us for a few hours in the afternoon and listen to our suggestions. We're not gonna get that with Zuckerberg or anybody else that's up to chart of these
And,
companies.
if we pick one or two, whatever it is, or a couple of them, and we just start advocating it, and this isn't gonna happen overnight. We spend the next 2 years, I don't wanna go that long, I want it to be done tomorrow too, but if we spend 2-3 years on our individual platforms and just keep repetitive saying it, not every day, but once a week, whatever the fuck it is organically, we'll eventually get people to go there and start to make that the hub of it. You gotta make it easy and accessible for people. That's what everybody wants right now. They don't wanna have to go through a bunch of clicks and links and whatever it is and stuff. And make it, it's sad to say, but you gotta have to make it like fun and whatever it is too and stuff. It has to be like appealing and whatnot and stuff. So if we could just do simple things like that on Minds, it will work and just start slowly steering traffic towards it over time.
Yeah, I do have a Minds account, but I haven't used it much. I'm not that familiar with the platform, but is it a platform where we can share information and people can access the information without having to create an account, or do they need to create a Minds account in order to?
They can view it, but the comments and that kind of thing, of course, they'd have to create an account.
They
But you
can
can just
view
go to
it.
minds.com, whatever, and still see the pages and stuff. It won't pop up like Facebook, say log in to see it.
It's got a privacy feature, so if you wanna make your content private
You
to
can
only
share
your
it public.
friends, you can, but you can make it public.
Yeah.
That's another point when we interviewed Bill for our podcast. He mentioned like not only just sign up for your account, but actually use Minds. Like we don't want it to just become like stagnant or like some kind of wasteland where we all join but nobody actually uses it. So I mean, go through your newsfeed, like people's posts. That's important. Especially that support and feedback. That's what keeps them going.
And that's what keeps people on Facebook, right? Because when they come to Minds and they're glad that all their favorite journalists and activists are there, right? But none of their friends, there's no interaction. They're just like, okay, I'm going back to Facebook right away. But if they go there and on Minds, you're actually more interactive than you are on Facebook. They're like, wait, I actually can talk to the journalists I've been following who on Facebook is too big or too busy to keep up with me. But on Minds, there's only 100 fans so far. I'm one of the early ones, and I can interact with them. That's how it's been for me. At least I've been trying to make an effort when I see the people who are actually already on Minds and these alternative platforms to comment back to them and interact with them.
Are you not on Facebook anymore?
I'm not on Facebook. I exist in the shadows of Facebook.
He is on Facebook.
I have an alter ego. That's it.
So I will say this: what Nick said earlier is absolutely correct. Though what we're seeing is a splintering off through this process of decentralization, where there's going to be a whole bunch of different platforms. There already is a whole bunch of different platforms that people are getting on. So it behooves us to get on to as many platforms as possible and to post our content to as many as we can handle at a single time. And honestly, I'm not even the best proponent of that because I haven't done a good job of posting on anything except Facebook because that's where everybody is. So I'm going to have to take a page out of my own book and try to get on to these other platforms.
So being consistent with what we say is also important.
Lesson taken from Sterlin's mishap.
So to add on to this point now about how do we get, like Ryan's saying, letting people interact with the audience, like making it fun or whatever. So one of the other third point was sharing resources, networking, collaboration, right? And this has come up a few times too. One of the things that used to happen all the time was friend bombs, like sharing content, cross promotion of events, like reaggregating each other's articles when possible. And some of us already do this, so it helps boost each other's work. But one of the things that I think is important with that, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier with interacting with the audience. So let's say that everybody that is part of this coalition or that's interested in moving towards Minds or at least promoting it, if we, from this point out, agree that every Friday on our pages, we post a meme that has our logo saying, hey, find us on Minds now, then as people are surfing their feeds, they're going to start to notice that, hey, like, oh, all my favorite journalists are posting today. I think that's something that might seem silly where, let's say the first Friday, all the outlets post police brutality memes or police brutality articles, or all the activists go feed the homeless on the lab. Something where there's some unified coalition that's getting pushed through social media as well as leading to actual on-the-ground action. That's the kind of collaboration, not just, obviously the sharing the memes, the sharing of articles, but where they're seeing this unified cross-platform message, like, oh, everybody from Eleanor and those whatever labels they want to give us, the libertarians and the progressives and the anarchists are all pushing the same message. They're all my favorite anti-establishment people on Minds now or whatever. I think that's important too, to just have some kind of cross promotion that way.
I feel like something perfect right now, which you addressed and you actually have like information, facts to back it up, is to undermine the fuckers that are undermining us. It's a perfect thing to do right now. And we have factual information. If you provide that to me, I can provide that to at least 50 Instagram accounts. And we know everybody on every social media platform. We have to learn how to fight back like that and just provide information like that. And if we organize a day, I'm a very organized person, but Luke as well. If we could just say, hey, within the week, Monday through Friday, Sunday through whatever, just share this article, let's just do it, leave it like that. And maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, whatever we could commit to and how dedicated people are to sharing, focus on a couple topics like the private banking system, like the corrupt media outlets, whatever it is, and really just have a unified message. And at the end of the day, if you want to believe in this or not, we are leaders in this movement. If we lead by example and we show them that, hey, we're sticking together, guess what? All the people who look up to you guys as individuals, they're going to do the same thing. So it's just kind of like the trickle down effect.
I'm glad you're saying this because Gavin, I think it was, said that as well. We got to think about everybody else that came before us. Yeah. Everybody else that's dead.
Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all these fucking people dedicated their lives to do something similar that we're doing.
Like all those for sure, yes, all MLK, Malcolm X, all these other people that have come before us. It is now our turn. We cannot put this off on anybody else. We have got to.
Imagine if they had social media, how many more people they could reach. We reach more people than them, and we're like just regular people probably living out of parents' houses.
And this is the problem. We're trying to operate on their platform.
I would have followed Lysander's spirit.
This is why innately we are already at a disadvantage by being and operating on their platform. We have already abdicated our power. We have got, there is no, I really feel like there is no discussion. We have got to migrate.
No, they
to
tricked
lights.
us. They tricked us. What they did is they overfunded these companies.
They said it was
what
free.
should be
You
big.
became
They
the
said it was
product.
gonna be a common platform.
Yeah.
You brought your audience,
Yep.
and then they bait and switched everybody, and they cut them off.
But you know how
Criminals.
you learn and grow, you fall on your face, and we all did it.
And I also think we gotta accept
No, I know, I got it.
We all signed up for these platforms too, and there are journalists and activists among us who never, like James Corbett, never used Facebook, never used Twitter, and has a huge following on YouTube that he built by getting people to go to his website and sign up for his newsletter. So he's like, "Oh, you guys are getting purged? Yeah, that's what I've been saying is gonna happen since the beginning." And you know, so like I said, we need to, just like we encourage I think among us, the people who follow our work to have personal responsibility in their own lives. Like we have to accept that we kind of set ourselves up for this. We did use the tool, we built it as a following, but now we've realized the limits of that tool. And so, you know, I think we all see there's something
Yeah,
better
make
on
a point real quick. I just wanted to go on top of what Sterlin was saying about splintering stuff, because you know, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen is as Facebook kind of fades away, we're not going to have a one go-to platform. I think that there's another point there where we can kind of collaborate is, so all right, for instance, with the anti-media, I was never able to really justify the resources to make like a Snapchat, to dedicate somebody to running our Snapchat, because this is like you gotta have someone that's willing to go on video, and it's time consuming, it's expensive. So as things splinter, it's going to be harder and harder for news outlets to chase down all of our audience to these different social media apps or sites or whatever. It's going to become more expensive for us to say, hey, instead of just running a Facebook and a Twitter, now we got to run 15 different apps, right? And so how am I going to afford to pay, I don't know, 5 people to run 15 different apps for me, especially now that we're talking about revenues being like way down, right? So this could be another point of collaboration where we can identify some people who are really good at running certain apps, and we can kind of, again, go back to this idea of sharing the costs for these people, and so that we can have someone that's not like just running Snapchat for us for 20 minutes a day. We have someone that's running Snapchat for a bunch of us for like 8 hours a day.
We need a bunch of errands.
Right? Now the problem goes back to Facebook, where they kind of, a lot of us got, I think a lot of the part of the takedown was that we were sharing the admins and stuff like that, and so we have to concern ourselves about that. But I think this could be another point of collaboration, is sharing, finding social people who are good at social media, and sharing, hiring them and kind of sharing the cost, and also allowing them to make more money too, because they could do it almost more of a full-time basis. And then it'll allow us to be able to, while spending less resources, be able to chase down our audiences on all these different like apps and stuff like that. So I think that's another point that we should talk about, sharing our resources and collaborating together.
I would also say don't give up on cryptocurrency and blockchain platforms. It's a bear market right now. So sentiment, as I was saying earlier, is down all across the board. But I still think it's very possible that new platforms are going to crop up, or some may already exist right now, where people are going to be able to generate some decent amount of revenue again, right? You get on Steam right now, and you can't really do that well simply because of the way the market is. But this is nothing that's out of the ordinary in the crypto space anyway. There's been years where there's been bear markets, and the percentage-wise has been down just the same amount, although it looks worse simply because all the valuations of the cryptocurrencies are up right now. So it's good to keep in mind that at any time, these platforms can spring back to life, and people will start making money again. But I'm not going to say it's going to emerge the same way like the Steemit platform has, or some of these other platforms could be something totally new. And I'd be watching for something even outside the scope of blockchain to crop up, since we know that technology develops at an exponential rate. We're going to start seeing wholly new technologies crop up that are outside of the ordinary, or that people are going to be able to use to generate revenue, because that's just the age that we live in. People aren't looking to consolidate necessarily all of their resources into one organization. The splintering is going to occur in such a way that all kinds of platforms crop up that provide people with opportunities depending on their independent proclivities and their personalities, etc. So keep an eye on that. And just a side note, the cryptocurrency community is massive. Crypto journalism is huge right now. On Bitcoin.com, we get about 3 million page views in a bear market on our news site, and that's just on our website alone. We don't have to go to social media to get that kind of viewership. We built our platform up on Bitcoin.com. Luckily, we had basically an infinite amount of resources where we could do that. But it's good to keep in mind that the crypto community is super large, and that is an alternative form of journalism that we should involve in all these prospects and these ideas that we're considering.
just one thing on that, we didn't get to hear from, Ben was unable to make the call, and Jordan was, some people from Ben's team were gonna check in, but they didn't get to, and I'm sure some of you guys have heard about ICE or ICE Euphoria, that Ben Swan's playing this new platform that really sounds like it could be a lot of things we're looking for, but they're not expecting it to be even in beta till quarter, the end of this year, basically. So obviously, it's not an immediate solution, but that's something else to look out for.
And I will also say, don't just jump into a platform and look blindly. In the crypto space right now, it's a wash with scammers, hackers, schemers, and nasty people who are just trying to liberate you from your money. So what you have to do is keep an eye open and make sure you're not getting involved with platforms that are potential scams. The best way to do that is to exercise due diligence and do back research on these communities.
I've been on Telegram for about a month with people from Icegoria. I really wanted to talk a lot about Icegoria before I came here, but that was before I knew that they were so far out. It really is a good platform for a lot of the things that we were talking about creating. It's got a 24-hour channel, which is like a video channel that's going to have essentially like segmented telecasts or whatever, so like TV shows essentially. They said they're going to curate the first season, so they'll essentially have like 8 to 16 shows that'll be weekly shows or daily shows, and then the next season it will be through a delegated operation system on the blockchain where content creators will actually be able to vote for whose programs act out, or whoever else has live stream programs or podcasts or whatever want to get onto the channel, the live video channel. And that's monetized through ads and on the blockchain, so you'll be compensated directly for what you do through the platform.
That sounds great, but I have one critique. I don't like the name, and I think that's really not going to translate well at all to the public.
That's why they're calling it ICE now. I'm just trying to call it ICE.
Yes, that's a really, who else uses those there?
To what you said about funding the writers and all that stuff, and I kind of mentioned it out there. A lot of these websites and stuff, you guys are pretty much just making your income on views and stuff, when you can also be capitalizing on supporting local businesses and stuff like that. Somebody like myself who owns a CBD oil company, I could pay or I could provide an opportunity for you to sell the product where you'd be making probably equal to more money than you guys were getting on views. And you guys know what you guys were making on views. I also had a website too. I had 30 plus writers, editors, and all that stuff, and we were generating a couple million views every week. It was just that or bring people together. So I started going with my events. Anyway, it's diversifying and really capitalizing on the opportunity that we all have. I'm an entrepreneur, my mindset is that, and then I went from making money in more of like a scumbag way to like actually using sustainable methods and compassion and whatnot to now build up my network into that realm and stuff. But like if you guys were to do your platform and have those views and have the products and stuff like that that's aligned with your moral values, you guys wouldn't even give a fuck right now, to be honest. You probably have so much money saved up you could get through this and reinvest in all that.
It's hard to make, like male vitality, like that kind of stuff.
It's really hard to make.
I mean, you have.
Right. When you're selling products, it's important for some of us who have built up these brands and these intentional distribution networks that a product doesn't go south. So say we do sell like a CBD oil treatment that ends up fucking over all its customers or a bunch of people that we censor or winds up just to be run by some sleazy people or a new blockchain token. Oh my God, like there's a billion.
I feel so. You should know who you're working with and all that for sure. But if you still have ads, do you know who's running those ads on your website and stuff like that? So it's like, what's the difference?
Hey Ryan, I just want to add to what you both said.
Squishy mushrooms and shit they want people to click on.
I get that, yeah.
I mean,
So I'm saying
we don't want any of that. We want to create a new ad
with quality products.
Basically, this is what we were talking about earlier. If we need, for those of us who are small business people or know other people who would be willing to, like, we all know like the reach that we're capable of getting at our max, right? So if we're aiming for that, and we know small businesses who have no reach, whether they, but they want national customers who are going to order things online, whatever it may be. If we start to develop, in addition to the newswire, and this is something I think you could help out with because you have access as well as other people want to get involved. to maybe circulate a list among us of trusted brands and different types of things that we know that we can trust, that are ethical products, that are maybe more
I'll
conscious
just say
products.
right now, I have a team of 5 people. We're working together, 3 computer designers, whatever. We're making what we're gonna. I don't have the name yet, but like the website Amazon, we're doing the same thing, but everything on there is like aligned with our values and morals. And it's not just going to be products; it's also going to be services. People who teach yoga, people who do meditation, people who do whatever it is in local areas. So you can search by zip code, whatever it is, and stuff. So that's what I'm working on for 2019. That's one of my next projects that I'm doing. But again, it's something that if you don't have to take on 500 companies. If you guys just had 2 or 3 or 5 at most, you've been doing excellent financially. And again, you're providing products that are actually like of the highest degree of your values and morals. And you can get to know the business owner and stuff. If you're not working with a corporation, you could call up Dr. Jess, who's an MD, now holistic doctor, and she'll break down exactly where her herbs and whatever come from, how she does it. You could get to know these people on a one-on-one level and stuff like that. And now you're helping her, helping you, and helping the people who look up to you, providing something. So
I think the fact is that none of us ever liked the Google ads anyways. Those of us who had to have Google ads on our website, no, not everybody did that, but it did pay the writers, but none of us were happy with it. And obviously the audience coming to those kinds of sites,
the audience hated those ads.
A lot of people like some people who are like, oh, I know the free thought, I know these websites, so I can put it aside, I want to read the content. Yeah. They'll deal with it, right? But say the average person who just stumbles on it, they might, ads are popping up, all those. None of us like those things, but it definitely helped pay us to do the things we're able to do. So I think as far as relying on that, that's also something we need to leave in the past, like Google Ads, those type of things.
I want to just interject real quick with what Ryan's saying. I definitely support it. This is what I was talking to him about. I forget this individual's name. But that's basically what we need to do. We need to come up with products and services that have a synergistic benefit for not only the product user, but also the product distributor and the business itself. To kind of springboard where Anita was saying, this is where the whole activism, nonprofit, and humanitarian Renaissance-based future relies upon.
And it's not just funding us; it's starving the beast.
Well, starving the beast.
Like economic boycott is our strongest weapon.
100%.
And so if you can get your followers to say, "Hey, I'm going to quit paying Time Warner.
Yeah.
I'm going to quit paying Comcast. I'm going to quit paying Netflix, and I'm going to take that money and I'm going to shift it to the alternative media." If we could just get a small fraction of people to boycott X and support Y,
you're voting with your dollar.
Yeah,
you're voting with your
lifestyle.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Well, see, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about communicating with the audience, right? If the audience doesn't know we're suffering, if the audience doesn't know we're struggling from censorship and that, because whenever June came around and we had to send out the things and let everybody know that anti-media couldn't pay writers, and I got the same week I got that from anti-media, from Ben, and then after this post about 2 weeks later. But the audience has no idea what's going on behind the scenes. They just, think things are going on. No idea that all the articles they've become used to are about to fall off and disappear.
We got to pop up.
We should be able to communicate that. Like you said, like craft a message that you're willing to buy a $5 cup of Starbucks coffee, but you don't want to pay $5 a month. And that's not definitely it's difficult to get the audience to pay. I think many of us have realized that. But if we communicate with them more and interact with them, it can definitely have an effect, because once I started, just as a brief example, recently as I started to get into focusing on making mini documentaries, I made it clear to the people who sign up with my Patreon account that money is going specifically to pay my editor. So if they like the documentaries we're doing, put the money there. And so I started to see just an increase, because I keep emphasizing that. And it's $1 here, $1 here, but they know that what they're paying for, So if the people know, hey, shop with your dollar instead of buying that $10 donut. Then give it. These are vegan donuts.
It's really simple.
They were $2. But instead of buying that crap, give $10 a month or $2 here, $2 here. You know what I'm saying? Like the interaction with the audience has such a big effect, and you're the same way. You just like to post memes and not make yourself the face of it, but you also know when you do the opposite. But when you put yourself out there, people respond. And I hated it too, because I realized that years ago I kept just trying to make it about the news and the things I was talking about. But then I realized if I was just real and kind of authentic, because I was having a shitty day, like guys, I'm struggling. All of a sudden, people want to comment, want to talk, because they care about us as individuals.
The value proposition of live streaming.
Say that again.
Are you talking about the value proposition of live streaming?
It's not just interacting, just engaging with your audience, whether that means through text on your Instagram post, but just being authentic and for example, when we leave here today, all of us should be using our social media channels to tell people what just happened here. Like, we're saying it's historic with all these great things, but just
We
letting
definitely
people
should get
know,
a
like,
great picture.
something special happened today, and there's things coming out of this. That gets the audience to be aware of what's going on, gets them excited and pumped up, I think.
I'll just like put an example out there, I started my events in 2014. The reason why I started my events is my sister passed away. It's very hard for me to cry and whatever it is. I cried in front of hundreds of people, random fucking people I have no idea and stuff, because I'm expressing like my feelings, what I'm going through and all that. It's something that touches me at the end of the day. But when you show that emotional, like the rawness, the realness of who you are as an individual, that's where you earn the respect and trust of everybody.
So I wanted to go off what you were saying. I know personally, I have tried to go directly to companies that like I thought were good companies and try to approach them with like a sales pitch and say, hey, why don't you sponsor our company? Run ads on our website or whatever. And like, you send out 100 emails and you might get one guy to answer and say, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Like, so I had a guy working as like almost a full-time ad sales guy trying to get direct ad sales from companies that were a good match to our content and stuff. And it's really hard.
So I'm saying.
So what I'm saying here maybe is we maybe have identified another point of collaboration where we can start to have a salesperson for all of us that can just, his job is to go and make the sales pitch to companies who we find align with our businesses, right? And then we could start getting these companies. The other issue that you have is if you get a local business, I can't have a business in Houston advertising to my reader in Seattle, right? So we have to, if we do this, we're gonna have to partner with some type of existing ad platform who can use geo-targeting and use their algorithms to be able to serve up. When someone's reading my website in Houston, can serve up that local coffee shop that's right there in Houston that wants to advertise with us. You know what I'm saying? So if we're going to do this, first of all, it's gonna be a big project because I'm sure you guys have tried to approach companies and stuff and how much. Yeah, and it's just the reason why we still have Google Ads is just so much easier. You just put the code in and boom, it's done.
They have people that contact us. They like have like the RFID wallet shield and shit, but I mean that's not a big seller,
Yeah, and a lot of times the people contacting
takes
you aren't really the ones that you want to be.
Yeah, it's valuable ad space, and I can throw it up there. There's not gonna be very many people are gonna be buying like the thing you hang in your window to tell cops that you don't want to follow. I got a bunch of samples at the house of these people that contacted us, but it's not a viable.
If we're gonna do direct ad sales, we have to be able to have an ad mix, right? Because you can't just put the same product over and over because after a while it gets saturated, you get the first 10 clicks off it and then it doesn't get any more. So if we're gonna do it like that, it's gonna take, again, it's resources that no individual one of us have to do. But we'll have to have maybe 100 companies that we get to advertise with us. We'll have to partner with some company who already has technology where we can just plug in the info and then they have a little ad server that will serve up the right ads to the right people in the right places and stuff like that. And I think that would be something great because then we wouldn't have to worry about being demonetized either because it's our network.
Think about the diversity in our group though as well. Like even just like between the outlets, right? So let's say we did form just like another coalition focused on the ads thing, right? So somebody approached us and they say we want to put some ads on different sites based on what their product is. We're like, okay, well, we connect them with the right outlet or the right outlet that's local to something. You know what I'm saying?
Well, here's why that's really important. Menard didn't mention that, but NewsCard on their website it says that they're going to attack and go after the like us, like they gave us a bunch of red X's and shit. The sites that have the red X's and shit, they're going to go to the advertisers of those sites and demand that they pull the ads off the site. So they're trying to demonetize us right now and cripple the entire industry. So
they're going to definitely, we're going to have conscious sponsors basically who can see through the propaganda.
And I was just saying, I wasn't specifically talking about ads. That's not my key appeal. I'm saying sell them a product. Like you were saying, you're stripping them away. So like when I market my CBD oil, why are you taking Tylenol and Advil? Why are you getting chemotherapy? Why I'm showing them an alternate way to I shouldn't say I'm going to say heal themselves. I'm not supposed to say that by law. But anyway, so that's what I'm saying. Provide an actual product, not the ads. I mean, I know you guys do ads because you get a ton of traffic and stuff. But if you're providing them an actual product, and you can have an affiliate link where now my company just sends it out, or you can set up a wholesale account where you have a team or one or two people to mail it out yourself, or you increase your profit margin now from say 20 or 30% through affiliate link to 100% profit margin and stuff, and now you're actually sending out the product. It's that's what I'm talking about. I don't care about ads per se. I mean, I could pay you guys for advertisement and stuff, but I'd rather you actually educate people on CBUO, educate people on what DHA is, educate people on, say, a detoxification kit, stuff that's actually, a lot like I'm saying, stuff that's actually aligned with our values and moral views on things. These products exist out there. I'm in contact with a lot of them. I can get you in contact with them and stuff, and sell the actual product that will help people and stuff like that.
I think we should look towards the crypto space when it starts to improve for that, because it's, once again, a mutually beneficial.
Yeah, we drove so much engagement with Dash whenever we worked with Dash.
Free Thought Project T-shirts or conspiracy theorist T-shirts.
I mean, it's watered down.
You could get one. You just got to give us $10 a month.
Books on crypto.
See, I think something that's important that what he's saying that probably is not being heard is that it doesn't matter what happens everywhere with the market, crypto up and down, whatever. If you have your own product, you cannot, like, they cannot go to this, like, sponsor and they're not gonna fuck you over that. You have your own shit to sell.
Yeah.
So.
And I'll connect you with the owner, the individual. You can make your own independent choice, whatever research, and look at the quality of the product, the integrity of the company, whatever it is, and go from there. I'll just speak on my behalf, my company. We pay 100% of our workers health insurance and everything. Try to find one corporation, one company in this country that pays 100% of their employees health benefits and
I'd
stuff
like to
like
fill out
that.
an application.
We are expanding right now, but yeah.
So this is a bad example, but I think kind of what you're saying is InfoWars seems to have successfully done, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like has a store where they sell these products, which is probably where he gets a lot of his revenue from.
Yeah.
I mean, InfoWars is obviously a bad example,
Yeah, I know,
but I think that
Dude, it's what's kept them alive.
he's proven that the model works. So yeah, I mean, I never really thought about it.
I've
but
seen
yeah,
it like.
I think like maybe we should set up
But
like a
I'm
store
not doing
inside of our
pyramids.
website.
It's like what you sell is what you sell. I'm not getting a cut. Well, I guess I'm the owner of the company, so you're helping me out. But just saying, you're not getting a cut of what he sells. Or we don't do that and stuff. It's what you do as an individual, what you do as an individual, and you pretty much have two options: affiliate program or fulfill the orders yourself. Fulfill the orders yourself, you have 100% profit margin. If you're in retail, that's fucking amazing. 20% for affiliate, which is still really good. All you do is put a link, a code, and whatever you sell, that's it and stuff. But you could capitalize on that. You could capitalize on your engagement on your website, and there's other ways to go about it. I do three things. I hold my events, so I capitalize on bringing people together. Then I capitalize on my website traffic, and I capitalize on the products I sell and stuff. And I'm sure there's probably other avenues out there that I'm not aware of that do, but that's how I go about it.
I just want to throw one thing into that. Keep in mind that for certain groups, this goes back to what EJ was just talking about. For certain groups, the biggest resource that we have is people. So when you're looking at nonprofits, and I was just talking to executive director the other day, and he was telling me that the biggest problem he has is getting people that are passionate who want to do the work. So you guys have reach, you have people, you have that resource. So you start looking at nonprofits that are willing to pay for marketing, willing to pay for advertising, education. If you do the newswire and you guys decide to do a nonprofit foundation on of that, anything that goes towards educating, whether it's educating the public on issues or whatever, that money can then be dispersed to the people that are part of that newswire organization. Just something to throw in.
Yeah. I still agree. At the end of the day, the websites are amazing, but it's the in-person stuff. Like what you're doing, the events and all that, that is the most life-changing, most direct effect that we can do. And if you really look at history, anybody who's brought people together, they usually end up in one place. I'm not going to speak that into existence right now, but it's the truth. So if anything, we should do this event, whatever you want to call this, more often, bring more people together, and then support people like yourself, myself, and other individuals. We're taking the time and the dedication to bring people together. Because anybody who runs events, and I'm one of them, it's fucking hard. It takes a lot to put an event together, to organize it, to do all the shit. It's stressful, whatever it is and stuff. And to support people like that are putting their neck on the line and putting their face out there. I started off anonymous. Nobody knew who the fuck I was. But then I'm like, you know what? This is bigger than me behind the scenes and stuff. If I could bring people together, I'll have more of an impact. But how am I going to bring people together if I'm wearing a fucking mask all the time and stuff? So it's like you got to break down the walls. You have to take the mask off, let people connect with you and stuff. And I said it before. I say it everywhere. no matter what you do in life, you're always going to be judged. It doesn't matter if you drive a Bentley or a Corolla, you work at CBD oil or wherever it is, you're always going to be judged. So just stand in your light, be who you are, and then that's it. The people who judge you, fuck them. The people who embrace you, love them, and that's as simple as it is.
And I'll pivot from that real quick. I think this is why we also need to highlight other people that do things that we don't do. Because I think innately we all feel like, yes, we have to do every single thing ourselves. And while that's good, it's also destructive. It's not beneficial. We need to reach out to other people who are doing things and highlight what they're doing, because that might be the renaissance. That might be the key. We are already set in our ways. We need to highlight everybody else that's doing other things.
You were pretty much saying that. Like there's some people who are Instagram savvy, Facebook savvy, whatever it is. Like, say you guys don't want to go to Instagram, support the people on Instagram. The people on Instagram support the people on Facebook. You know what I mean? Just do it that way and all that. That way you don't have to pay 15 people to run all these social media platforms. Stay kind of in your lane in a sense and focus on that and put all your resources to do your best in that area and support each other.
So when you say all your resources, this is fantastic. This has been absolutely amazing, crazy amazing. But I want to encourage everybody also to focus on your own community, because it really is about community. And I'll tell you, last year at this exact same time, this exact same day, I was in Denver, Colorado at Bruce B's Community Share Fest. And he had 200 plus people, 16 bands. Everybody donated food for the local Denver community. They went out and they distributed 4 carloads of coats, food, luggage, donations, etc. to the community. The next day, the community is involved. They have a community center. When I was on the tour, I went to New Hampshire. There's a club in Manchester called the Quill that has got people playing chess and a Library of Liberty and a nice smoking room downstairs and a true community that where the community gets together. There's free keen, there's what's going on in Arizona, there's what's going on in Acapulco, there's all these different communities. And if they keep growing, I mean, they can't shut that down, that can't be censored. You've got a relationship with the people, they've got your back locally, that's your cell 411, that's your, that local community. Just spend a small amount of time focusing on your own local
I used to say, I hate being fear-based like Alex Jones and stuff, I used to say it when you go to the event, you're meeting people in your local area. If there's ever martial law or whatever it is, now you know people in your local area. You could get together and stuff like that. Now you can support people, and I think you were saying how to get all the introverts together and stuff like that and stuff. That's the most powerful thing. When you can get introverts out of their comfort zone to come in person and do all that stuff. Because now those people, before I started coming into groups and all that stuff, I would be in my house and just thinking about all this shit. Does anybody think like me? Can I express myself? My family, my friends don't get it and stuff. That's why I'm saying it's life-changing. When you bring people together and you give them a space to express themselves and be themselves and they don't feel like they're going to be judged or harassed or whatever, and that's all that matters in life and stuff. When you can let people become themselves and embrace who they are.
2 things, guys. We have about 37 minutes left. And also, how do you guys feel about doing this? Do we want to do it once a year? Do we want to do it twice a year? And also, is Houston a good spot? We picked Houston because it's a hub in the middle of the country. It wasn't and a cheap airport. But what do you guys feel? Should we be doing this twice a year, once a year?
At least once a
year.
And also,
at least twice.
We could do
West Coast, East Coast.
It doesn't have to be physically in person, every time. But say we check in a couple of months ago, or we continue the conversation through Minds and elsewhere, right? And if we decide, hey, let's get everybody again on a Zoom call, we can do what we've been doing here, but online, and then maybe, like you said, once a year actually connect face to face, or however it works out. I mean, I think that, in my view, we let those things, I guess, just happen as they will, because we really have no idea what's going to happen after today. But I just want to emphasize these 5 things just briefly again, because I want to make sure that and I will be sending these notes out on the email, just so everybody who kind of crashed the call, they didn't get to get the last 20 or 30 minutes of it. But we've talked about creating this hub, creating this newswire, this association, and how that could work. There's a lot of discussion around that. We're going to create a Minds group for people to get in and have those discussions, and I'll send a link to all that. Migrating, putting a lot of effort into Minds, as well as doing whatever building you're doing now, and also making that public to our audiences, that we're trying to shift our work there, and let us have a discussion on if people want to coordinate, hey, should we start posting? Eleanor was trying to do the mind shift and get a lot of people on January 1st, it was after what we're doing here, but she's been pushing that. So there's things like that.
Keep that hashtag going.
Like keep the hashtag MindShift going and keep posting, like, and that that'll lead back to everything that she's already been doing, that other people have been doing. Sharing resources, networking. I don't know if you mentioned this earlier, but we were kind of touching on it. But cross promotion of like not just sharing pages, but from Facebook, Instagram, and vice versa, and back and forth. That's one thing that Ryan's talked a lot about, is just using our reach, using the things that we have to get the stories and get the ideas and get the memes, as well as promoting what we're doing with our work. Like, we're going to take a group picture before everybody leaves here. Post that on your social media feeds. Even if you feel it's appropriate, on your outlets pages, and let people know, hey, there's this many different outlets represented here, right, that are about to start working together. And there's a lot of power in that. And I think that when our audience, or for lack of a better word, our friends and those who keep up with our work, see that, they're going to be invigorated the way that we're feeling right now, just to know that this is actually happening. Like, holy shit, they're not just sitting online bitching about Facebook censorship or whatever. Newsletters, developing our own individual newsletters, as well as we're talking a lot about collaboration, but obviously building up our own individual newsletter followings and things like that. People are going to use email no matter, unless the internet goes through some really drastic change and email just falls out of favor. Email's been around. It's going to continue to be around, right?
Can I add something on that? So email lists, everybody's got their own email lists. Conscious Resistance, Facebook, the Free Thought Project, MonCrief News. So I'm not saying, Menard, give Jason all of your email addresses, you know what I mean? But maybe on the bottom of your newsletter, make it voluntary for people who are receiving your newsletter, like suggest, hey, what about going and liking MonCrief News and signing up for their newsletter, like trying to strengthen numbers, trying to build all of our numbers together. Like that's a simple thing that will make all of us stronger.
Even after I'm sending out my newsletter tomorrow. I send out a Sunday newsletter, right? I could easily add to the bottom after today, like, check out our partners, MonCrief News, Free Thought, like the different people collaborating.
Link to sign up to their newsletter. You know what I'm saying? Like it's simple.
Absolutely.
It's kind of, I forget who said this, but it's like give without like having the intention of receiving type of deal. We have to get back to that and stuff, and just humble ourselves and just give, and it always comes back to you no matter what.
Don't be a scumbag. Don't be a scumbag. So newsletter, text, cross promotion. What other ideas? I want everybody who since this is we're only here for everything you need to say, get it all out.
Have a radio and podcast. You were all open to come on.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, let's be on each other's shows. Let's come on each other's shows and promote each other.
Anybody wants to write about cryptocurrency, send me an article. You'll get out to 2 million some people per month. So I'm the editor on the opinion section. So anything you want to write, send it to me.
You guys want
Almost anything.
Who has a podcast here or a show or something, right? Who has a podcast? Who does a show sometime?
That's dope. I want to be on every.
Interview each other. Like, let's all find some issue or some way that we can support each other and collaborate. So the other thing was the communication method. So we kind of talked about creating minds groups, for communicating, and right now we're communicating via email. We can continue to do that. There was some discussion about Discord, but I do think that obviously getting in the habit of not making our everyday communication via Facebook is advisable, which I think we're all guilty of it. Like, yes, I don't exist on Facebook, but I still communicate via Facebook. They still got me. So finding other platforms. Is there anything that anybody uses? Telegram,
I like
Signal?
WhatsApp just because you can swipe. Like if you say something, and I want to talk to you and not reply to that, it's specifically what comment you're going to.
What'd you say? WhatsApp?
WhatsApp.
As long as you know that it's not secure.
Yeah, you're not communicating things.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far down with that, but damn, they could find anything for crying
Yeah,
out
but
loud.
Signal is actually encrypted, whereas WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, so it's.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on the kind of
the way I look at it, it's fuck them, let them see what we're doing so they know.
A lot of people don't have that privilege though.
Yeah. But look, if we get to the
Well, a lot of
point.
people are in places where they're being chased or
sorry,
doxxed or things like that. So it is a privilege to say
I
don't
am
come
first
here.
row privilege.
So I definitely think having secure platforms is necessary. Especially if you're trying to communicate anything sensitive at all. Like I said, there's other people who don't have that privilege, but also if you're just trying to, as a journalist or anybody trying to communicate anything sensitive, you definitely don't send that through Facebook, or I would advise anything owned by Facebook. But maybe for day-to-day communication, I'm going to start communicating through Minds more. I try to keep those chats open, whenever I'm on them to see if anybody pops up, because occasionally I will get messages from people that are on there. We're using email. I use Telegram as well. I don't know what other things are convenient for people.
Riot.im, it's a dual layer. There's a protocol layer with matrix, and federated server program.
But is it user friendly? I've seen it before. This is the problem with a lot of the new
Pretty
tools. Is
good.
some people can't figure them out.
So we like Telegram, right? I just saw on Telegram you can swipe and talk like comment about specific things. So if everybody likes Telegram, then go with that.
I got you.
Yeah, just make sure I get on.
Just one thing I would like to share, one of the things, I'm in the Dallas area, we do actual like hands-on activism, and one of the most popular events that we do is the Feed and Eat, the first week of December. And as you've seen in the news, like, you know, the cops will throw bleach in people's foods, or they'll take them to jail. So what we do, and it's probably like 10 of us, we show up with our AR-15s, our guns, everything, right? And
Stop the rest of it.
this December was our 6th year, and we had probably more volunteers than we needed. So, you know, the momentum of like the actual locality was amazing, and everybody brings like, we had even people doing haircuts, we give out blankies, clothes, food, everything that you can think of. And, you know, the cops will be like a dog or Rottweiler that's like, you know, tied to the fence. We're just kind of like, you know, with our guns and everything, just serving the food. But the point I'm trying to make is it's extremely important that maybe you consider doing something local like that to get your local support. And, you know, I still create them. And a lot of people would rather buy it from me because they see the work that I do. I'm like, if you buy it from me, I get to do this shit. So they're like, yeah, you know, I mean, sure, I would rather buy from you. So whatever it is that you sell, or a service or product, if you do Reiki or massage, whatever, they're gonna go for you, even though somebody else may be closer or maybe cheaper because of what you're doing. So, yeah, I mean, we at the end, once we, you know, feed everybody, we go have a few beers, and then we come out like at 9, 10 p.m. and we go up to the underpasses to see people like sleeping like on the streets when like the temp's like 32 degrees, and we make tents for them. You know, so we put out 20 tents a night or whatever. So, and on all of that, like, I mean, we don't do it for show, we do it because we care. But we post it out there, like, you know, the cops come afterwards with freaking knives, they tear the stupid tents, and then people go back to, you know, like, I mean, it's illegal to be homeless in Dallas, basically. So we have that huge support from local people. Anyway, all that to say, I would love to invite you to consider doing something wherever you're at, just to get that support. And, you know, it also brings some money to you, so it's helpful for everybody.
I want to throw one thing out there. I liked what Gavin said about the tribe. So there's a couple of things I'm offering. I have about probably every single training program that has ever been created, whether it's on the left or the right, from SCIU to the Highland Center. So I have an online library. If anyone wants access to any materials, I would love to share it with you. I also believe in conscious training. So as you're doing your type of activism and you bring in new people, because I know it's not just about new media, if you need any type of training or whatever, I'm always willing to help out with that too. If you want it. Well, not for you guys, but for you guys, of course.
I just want to back up what Luis said there, because again, we have a mix of, you know, industry organizers and activists as well as journalists, and I think there's a lot of crossover and collaboration. And I can say that definitely the more involved we are locally in our community, and you know, we're all different. Not each of us are going to be the ones that go get dirty in the garden. Like that's my thing. I enjoy that. There's a lot of community that comes out of community gardens and these kind of things, but also whether it's helping the less fortunate, you know, doing different things, just those who are in our community who are in need, right? In whatever way that comes, it does build rapport in your community where people start seeing, like for example, we're here in Houston, me and Micah collaborated, we started the Houston Freethinkers in 2010 and did everything from, you know, kind of violent confrontation type stuff that, you know, got us on the news. And also we're out there feeding the homeless and being involved in the community so much that when the local press actually came after us and started calling us local groups of conspiracy theorists who were trying to be violent to the cops and whatever, nobody believed anything they said because like, what are you talking about, that group that's been, you know, doing food not bombs and donating to all these different organizations, that those are the violent people you're talking about? And so we established enough of a connection with our community that nobody listened to anything they said. And, you know, so we've seen the responses from that over the years. So I definitely think that if you're not involved in some degree locally, which I think some of us who are focused digitally, we kind of forget about what's going on in our own community sometimes. And, you know, that, hey, like I'm chasing down all the stories going on nationally, internationally without realizing like there's you got corrupt mayors in your backyard, I promise you, like, and politicians and people like that. And, you know, so, and even that, like, whether it's your stuff is more proactive and solution-based, or just starting to go down to your local city council meetings and asking your local politicians questions, like, those are ways that you can make yourself known as a journalist and an activist in your community, and then you're gonna get more resources. Because of our persistence, you know, that led to us now having an FM show here in the community, on the community radio. And, you know, that's just been 7-8 years of just starting out doing internet radio and pushing the streets and doing all that stuff. So my point is, like, we should definitely not forget about what we can actually cultivate in the streets.
We got rid of red light cameras in my hometown, and because of my friends and I, we get open carry in Texas. So, and we're about to get cannabis legal here in Texas because of the shit that my friends and I are doing, like actual shit in the building of these. So it's like really important to not just, you know, be on the computer, but go out and actually fight all these fuckers that are trying to take our liberties away.
Yeah, and
Derick, do you have physical materials? I saw your city hall meeting. Do you have physical materials, and if not, do you want to put some together? Because I've been reading the hell up on 5G, and that is literally, in my opinion, right now, not like AI, World War III, that is probably the biggest help. I'm an applied physiologist, I'm a grad school for this, and that's another thing. If you guys ever need help with exercise, with nutrition, life coaching, any of that, kind of like, what's his name, Gavin. But I'm really considering going around, for instance, my mom's neighborhood, she lives in a retired neighborhood, and I'm just waiting for that 5G to go up. And my dad just died of lung cancer a month ago, and I guarantee a lot of it had to do with the microwave radiation and smoking, motherfucker. But that's a side point. But man, the day that goes up, I'm gonna go. I should probably go before and preface it, but that is gonna be a really big deal in the next year or two.
Well, that's gonna
ironically today in Houston, right, is one of I think 12 or 13 cities where the rollout of 5G began. Today.
Yeah, I saw a tower actually this morning off the highway, and I was like, get the fuck out of here. There it is.
I've been talking to the Empower movement, and they just put out a 5G notice of liability.
So they have materials and whatnot?
It's a formal notice. You basically eventually file a lien on. You notice, you create a contract. They don't reply, then they consent. It's the same thing they're doing with the smart meters. If you don't reply or object, then it's implied consent. So you're doing implied consent to them. And you're billing them. So you put an amount, and it adds up over time. And eventually, you carefully document it, and then basically file a lien and can't get a loan.
Yeah, because they're putting in one tower every 1,000 feet, which means hundreds, maybe millions, which means virtually everyone in America will be affected. So if you want to talk to your community, that's one issue that every single human being in America is going to face in the next 2 years. And if you then of course then it snowballs from there, the community interaction, yada yada yada. But that to me personally is probably gonna be my way to get into the local communities.
Yeah, I want to say these local community ideas are a great job. There's another thing that I'm a fan of, and what I'm involved in is doing a whole bunch of public speaking. So public speaking is a tried and true anarchist and libertarian tradition. We should all be able to get up in front of any size crowd and rain down truth without any kind of fear or concern. I speak at about 24 international conferences a year for Bitcoin.com, and I almost always never talk about cryptocurrency because I'm too busy talking about freedom with all of these individuals. So I really recommend, and you guys are all great speakers, but if you ever want to hone your speaking anymore, I always recommend joining the Toastmasters organization. There's always a local chapter. You can even start one if you don't have one already, but I've been a member of Toastmasters for the last about 2 years. I haven't been involved quite as much the last couple of months due to moving and some other complications, but Toastmasters is excellent for not only honing your ability to speak, but also teaching you the art of communication and to leverage rhetoric to such a good degree that people are able to listen to you and you're able to connect with them in a lot stronger fashion. So I really recommend Toastmasters, and I recommend doing as much public speaking as possible. I even had the opportunity to talk to government agents, especially people from the Securities and Exchange Commission, their attorneys and stuff, and tell them that what they're doing is not acceptable, and that we're here to undermine that as much as possible. I try to leverage diplomacy. It's difficult.
So we're down to like the last 15, 20 minutes. I just wanted to give everybody an opportunity. We're just going to go around the circle one more time, closing thoughts, like, brief, just so everybody feels like they have a chance to say whatever they need to say. And I don't know how long everybody's in town. I know we're going to have some people starting to head out. in the morning and next day or two. So I'm just really, really excited and thankful that you guys were willing to come down here to Houston, and yeah, this is awesome. So that's all I gotta say is thank you guys, and pass it around if anybody wants to share any final thoughts. And again, keep it brief so everybody can share what they have to say. So thank you guys for being here.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for coming to this. Thanks to Derick and to Jason for putting this on. In the midst of this like crazy world where all of our income was pulled out from under us, Jason and Broze managed to put this on, and I mean they deserve a big round of applause for that. I think I really think we have some viable solutions coming from this amazing group, and I can't wait to do it again, and I can't wait to come back the next time and be like, see, this worked, this didn't work, this worked, this didn't. That's going to be awesome. And I'm glad everybody's here. Keep up the good fight.
I feel once again, my name is Danny Epquest. I don't know you, I know so many people here. I'm very easy to get a hold of. One of the things that I set out to do early in my career was be as transparent as possible. I think that as activists, as journalists, as content creators, our relationship with the people who support us and our people who follow us is very important. So I'm very easy to get a hold of. I'm very easy to work with. I think it's important that, like I said earlier, that we all take action. Actions are very more important than words. I enjoy being here, but I'm really a man of little words. It's kind of hard for me. It's hard for me to bubble through this stuff sometimes. My plan for this year is honestly just to work as hard as I can for everyone and anyone trying to establish this media brand and this industry that we've created. So I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. I look forward to seeing you all again in 6 months or 12 months or 18 months, however long it takes for us to tear down the machine. Because was it on with things that Picasso quote and said the urge to destroy is also a creative urge, right? So
I got a good quote. I'm gonna butcher it, but it's by Buckminster Fuller. And he said, you don't change things by fighting the existing reality. You create a new reality that makes the current one obsolete.
Love it. Awesome. Good to say about it. So hi, thank you, Ben. Thank you.
I don't have too much to say, and I said quite a bit already, but I appreciate everybody for being here. I think Jason and Derick for putting this on. Derick messaged me early on, asking if I would come down, and I was more than happy to oblige it. It took a little while to get back to it. So thanks for everybody for being here, and thanks for sharing your thoughts and ideas. And I can't wait. I really like Ford's idea and Nick's idea. I think we're going to work together to try to build this coalition and develop this thing out. I'd also like the cryptocurrency communities to be involved in that as well. I think it's going to be beneficial. So appreciate you guys.
Appreciate the opportunity to the media, and look forward to working for you guys and lots of good ideas, like the store, like the news feeds, the consolidation of feeds. It sounds like you've got everything going with minds.com. Totally behind that. So I hope I can bring you presentation and get into the details of these platforms and their privacy. You gotta read privacy rights, and see what they're doing. So,
Yeah.
I've done some of that work. I should probably put that together.
Definitely need your help on the tech side.
You just need to be a mind whale now.
The price just went up on I pretty much said what I had to say today and stuff. I really appreciate each and every one of you and all your activism and dedication to this stuff. And yeah, I can't wait to work with you guys, see you around. Definitely follow my account or my event page. I travel everywhere, so I come to you with events and stuff. I've been in 50 cities and 8 countries, so I probably host an event or will host an event in your local area and stuff. So yeah, appreciate you all.
Same here. Thank you guys for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with all of you. As I said earlier, so many people in here are like inspirations to me, and I love sharing all of your all's work. And if you didn't get my info or social media or my card, please do. I'd love to help, either create content with you or work together however we can and grow this. So just thanks for having me.
Yeah, this has been amazing. Agree with what everybody's been saying. This is
definitely my tribe, our tribe, feels amazing. Meet everybody face to face. The solutions that came out of this after a few hours, I was blown away. I can't wait to get that email recap of what we went over and contact information for everybody so we can make sure. Thank you.
I feel like the fire has been reignited within me. Just knowing that everybody here, like we've all had the same experiences and like we're all in this together. And thank you for everybody for inviting me and for being here. I look forward to leaving music. I don't think I have anything to add at this point.
I don't really either, except I'm very emotional, and I said to her, to Anita, I said, we're gonna find the tribe here months ago. Matter of fact, I've been saying my whole fucking life that my goal is to find the tribe, and that is the tribe. We're gonna keep finding other tribe members. But right now, this is the core. Let's keep building and building and building. That's it.
Thank you.
As was said, it's certainly been an honor and privilege to be here among you like-minded people. I'm Tony Mead, and it's our passion for truth and freedom that I think brought us here, and the fact that we're all victims of persecution for speaking our minds, for expressing our free thought. And it's nice to see a coalition of people coming together. We're gonna make. I think we can make a change. I think that's our goal. That's certainly my goal, and I'm blessed to be a part of this. I am also not just a web poster. I'm also a content creator. I'm a published author and a writer, and you can Google my name, Tony Mead, and Sandy Hook, and you'll see articles on satanic pedophilia and other stuff that I've written. And I'm not the greatest orator, but I also appear on different podcasts. And I like to write more because I'm old. I can't remember everything. When I write, I can go back and fix it. I can edit. I can change. And so I like to limit myself a lot to the writing, but I'm certainly interested in actively being a part of this, and thank you for having me.
So like I started the day by saying, from truth comes reason, and from reason comes liberty, and I think we have a room full of people here who are committed to truth, who are committed to reasoning through things, even in their own different ways, and who are committed to freedom, whatever that looks like for them. So I think we have a really good room full of people here. I'm glad that we've mostly agreed that it's a good idea to get together some kind of an association that has the idea of mutual defense built into it, that we all stand up for one another when one of us is a victim of the kinds of attacks that kind of brought us into this room. And the idea of putting our content together, having a wire service, some kind of a location where without giving up our sovereignty as individual content creators, we're still making resources where it's possible to look at all of that stuff in one place. So I think it'll be really cool that we're going to go from this kind of meeting in physical space to now going back to being in our own different little worlds, but connected via some kind of secure communication that I guess we're going to hash out once this kind of is consolidated into an email. So again, I'm Ford Fisher, and it's been an honor working with you guys today.
I'm Cody Adams. I'm working on a documentary about this story, so some of you, I would like to come to your communities where your business is and talk to you about the censorship that happened to you and how you're fighting it, your solutions. That's the main purpose of the story, is to show the negative but to show the positive solutions. So if you're interested in being a part of that, let me know. And I travel the country, so I will come to you at some point.
I'm Mike. I thought, I'm sorry I missed this morning. I'm glad I was here for the afternoon. I think it's, I'm sure I'm not alone in this room, and having been involved in and seeing numerous, whether you want to call them freedom, political, or activism organizations, come out of a need, like everyone here is expressing, come together, have meetings, have conventions, form new organizations, and fall apart. I'm only saying that because I think that everybody here has talked about some of the takeaway, the new organization that was, or maybe that's a wrong word, a newswire sort of function. I think it's all in the action, after we leave here, we go back to the locals that everybody's talking about in our own communities. If there's no action afterwards, then, we all spend money, time. Obviously, I didn't spend very much living in Houston, so I should be in Houston every year. But I also, it's kind of silly because I'm very concerned about freedom. I don't know, I don't ever really self-apply the term activist or journalist or anything. Years ago, I've known Derick for a long time, sorry if I go too long here. But this ties to the local. Years ago, we started doing benefit shows, amongst other things, when we were pissed off, and these things would be multi-genre musical events, right? And they would be a benefit for Food Not Bombs or Vets for Peace or Normal, and Cody's been to some, and you've probably seen some on the internet somewhere. But my point is, after a while of doing these things, we were motivated because we were pissed off about the bailouts and pissed off about people who were just trying to grow some weed and getting, prosecuted, and pissed off about so many different things that we wanted to do, something productive rather than just be against these things, right? So these things drew us out into that local community. We had to enlist musicians from that local community to come and play these events. Well, the more you do things in that community, all y'all do, the more you know these people, right? The more you become, your relationship changes. You change also, right, as you change the world. So I've seen a lot of these people, they suffer the same things as the news media does. These are content creators, these musicians and such. For a little while I did a job for Google called Ad Raider. I basically sat around 30 hours a week and helped Google figure out what they were going to throw up when a phrase like a local musician's name came up. Did Drake match with it? So I've seen things like, how they use that. And the only reason I'm going back to this is, so after all these shows, bands start bringing CDs saying, can you help us? Musicians or people that in the community look to you for more than just news. They start looking to you for all kinds of things. And so I think all of us have these different connects. And, you were talking about business. We're talking about this news feed and pulling all this in together, right? One thing I connected with is just these little magazines. This one's been around for a dozen years in Houston. It has nothing to do with music and really not much to do with activism, but it was present in the community, right? So, able to go over there, talk to them, get some articles written, get some edge stuff that might not be their normal content. There's things like art and culture in Houston. And the only reason I'm getting to this is I've sat here and kind of kept quiet, thinking of, ways we could do things. And there's a lot of existing structure, like this magazine, for example, like those bands that have the same thing where they're not reaching anybody, but they have a whole other function and culture than people that are journalists, freedom fighters, whatever, activists, that sort of grind, right? But all y'all listen to music, right? Of some type, right? And so my point on all this is maybe what we need is also a way to mix more with the larger culture, to quit being so sectioned off in this room, to let these musicians who are singing about things that affect us, that no one's hearing, have part of our platform, or pick them up a little bit. Or maybe it's a visual artist, maybe it's a film. I think when you're talking about having each other on your shows, or maybe write an article, that's the beginning of that, right? That's sort of the beginning of that, because as you talk to each one of these people, you can ask them a question where they get to reference someone else in their locale, right? So we're bringing up not just that we already have X million that all these people reach, but you're lifting up your for this word came up, tribe member, okay? You're lifting up your fellow alternative journalist, whatever you want to call it, right? And they're able to lift up someone in their community. One thing I started doing when we brought bands on Freethinker Radio was ask them, when you come, we're going to talk about you. That's just assumed. I want you to come talk about some other act no one's heard of. Isn't that the point in a way? I know that the point is to advance freedom, to be able to have this freedom of expression, to be able to get these words out. And I'm rapping. But if we don't open it up beyond this room, as far as what we're trying to get out, then it is going to look like that news that just seems freaky and weird and such, But when all of a sudden, whoa, every musician that comes on there or artist that comes on, and you're not going to talk to them about what your main content is. You're here maybe to talk to them about what moved them. And in so doing, you start seeing that they're the same as you, that they had something inside themselves that moved them to express this. And I started noticing this at a farmer's market. I was like, just like you candle makers. I can go to Target and get a candle. I can order one online from Yankee Candle. I could do all Amazon, etc. but you know, I'm not gonna get all of them, same thing, I'm not gonna maybe get the best, same thing with CDs or music or books or news. It's all the same, you know, we're all turning, you know, I'm gonna just stop in like less than a minute. But unless we start pulling more in and looking to alternative music and alternative art and alternative, what you're asking the culture to look to alternative journalism, if we don't start actively doing that and leading by example, the good stuff we find. I mean, who was a kid once and heard a good song and shared it with a friend? Anyone? Let me get a hand raised if that ever happened to anyone. Wasn't that kind of just about as fun as hearing it? And that's kind of, I think, what we got to get to. So getting on everybody's show and getting that feed going, I think that feed could be how you plug people into maybe that ad thing you were talking about, you know? Like the people that are coordinating with that feed, that's the thing that's I'm not going to say hierarchical, but we're all plugged into that feed all of a sudden, right? Everybody's going to be drawing from it. So that's the point that could say, hey, you know, we got these ads. And people can just go, oh, well, we'll accept this one on our network. You know, and anybody that accepts it, but when the person goes to pitch it, they can say, here's the reach of the network. Thanks, sorry. Thanks for everybody working so hard. Oh, that 5 minutes of bullshit served you a little bit.
We got about 5 minutes to go through the last few people here, Howard. I know you like to keep it short. So
I'll keep it pretty short. So, my nom de guerre, Etienne de la Boétie squared, the original Etienne de la Boétie was a French political philosopher from the 1500s, and he wrote something called the Discourse of Voluntary Servitude. And in that, he chronicled the tools and the techniques that the rulers, the organized crime of the time, was using, and it is just as pertinent today as it was in the 1500s. And so what we're up against is we're up against ancient techniques honed to a kind of razor edge to control perception. But the good news is that once you understand that there is a man behind the curtain, or once you can make somebody understand that there's a man behind the curtain, and they're using this mainstream media platform, they're using these social media shenanigans to try and steer perception, and you can get them to turn that off, well, that revolution only goes in one direction. Nobody, when they figure out that there's a man behind CNN, or that CNN is untrustworthy, or Facebook is untrustworthy, do they ever go back to trusting CNN or Facebook or the government? And the final things that I want to reinforce are, if we can get the population to shift in their mind that government is not, it's not that it's legitimate, but it's illegitimate and it's being used to rob and control it. If you can get them to shift and not say, hey, this is deep state, but use the term organized crime. These are terms that they understand and they can see. I mean, people know they're getting robbed. They know they're getting robbed. They see the value of their income going back. All we got to do is explain to them where that money is going, and they're on our side. And we were winning. The final thing, my final comment is the reason that we're all in this room is because freedom, it was winning. It's the only thing. Voluntarism and freedom is the only thing that's fair for everybody. That's why they're so scared of us. It's the only thing. Nobody gets the ring of power. It's the only thing that we can all agree on. It's the only thing that's fair for everybody. And once you get people to accept that, it's all over. We win.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah. I'm gonna go next, just so that was gonna be there. I'm staying off cam temporarily because I have a situation for my safety. Someone's death threatening me, and they don't know what I look like. I don't think so. But I am gonna start like making shows, like going to Toastmasters and stuff, like getting better at public speaking. But it's just been so awesome. I'm so touched. Like I was moved to tears a few times during this. It came at the perfect time for me. I have a lot of stuff that I like to share, like whether it's Discord or whatever place, like ways that we can port contacts as well as all kinds of new features that can be, and ways to make money to funding models. Like, so I'm really excited to connect with anyone that wants to connect in the future with all that. Thank you guys so much.
So I'm leaving here today with clarity and joy. I will say that talking and knowing some of the background, the past year has been very hard for a lot of people, but when you're backed to the wall, instead of reacting with anger and frustration, what I've seen today is love and passion. So there's already a lot of great work being done, and I think there's the synergies in the air. I can feel it. So very happy. Thank you guys for putting this together.
Yeah, I'm going to say ditto to that, and also appreciate what you said about collaboration with artists. And somebody else had mentioned making this stuff look cool, and that's how you reach out to people. I'm a musician as well, and I used to wear a shirt on stage that said politics are sexy. And I think that, like, not that a lot of what we do is not lighthearted, but I think that in his Rules for Radicals, Alinsky pointed out that you gotta make it fun, or else people are gonna fuck off. And I think that pointing out that, I mean, not going to Standing Rock, I don't think that's particularly fun, but pointing out that giving a shit and being engaged and giving a shit about your community and about where the world is headed, that is the truest form of fun, and that's really what being an engaged human being, not just a citizen, is being all about, and that we're trying to put out the word of the people on the ground who are living those lives, and we're trying to connect people who are doing that, and making that more clear as well, so we pinpoint that aspect of it as well.
All right, I'm Joey. I'm with ACAT Radio, Nevada Cock Block. Smaller outlets, so people might not know me. So again, I'm Joey. I'm a huge fan of all you guys. I think that we're coming away with some powerful stuff here. Just strength in numbers. Two things that I didn't get a chance to talk about. So pooling resources, like if we do form like this federation or this cooperative, pooling resources like maybe like how unions do with union dues. If we have board members, like people that pay union dues, it would be voluntary. You can still be in the coalition. You know what I'm saying? If you don't pay money, but if you voluntarily choose to contribute to help pool resources, then maybe you get a seat on the board and can help steer the direction of this coalition, that type of thing. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a union member, so union is why I have a living wage in my, 9 to 5. But so I'm very pro union. But yeah, that's one route we could do for pooling resources. The other small suggestion. So we're talking about coordinated mass migration. Like we need to find a way to incentivize that migration. So whether if Bill can help us out with it, I don't know, financially, or something within minds that would help us to help other people. Like I'm thinking the same way you incentivize people to donate on Patreon, whether it's a Press News water bottle or a Free Thought Project shirt, like swag bags or something. Like, look, show to me that you got 2 people to sign up for Minds and you got them to like our pages. I don't know, with a screenshot. I don't know how we would work out the details, but like incentivize that migration, that mind shift in a way that it'll make people want to do it. So,
can I just jump in real quick because that reminded me, sorry. Bill did say that for every content creator that shifts to Minds, he would offer tokens, and then whenever somebody signs up for Minds so we each, if you have a channel, each of us has a referral key that you can then put into your newsletter or put out to your followers, and then whenever they sign up to Minds via that referral link, you get tokens. So
how would I go about getting part of the program? Just email them, tell them I'm a content creator.
Email me.
Let's hear.
They're also really good about verifying, like they'll give you the blue check mark.
One quick thing on that, just you're saying about Patreon, I mean, obviously we want all of our reports to go as wide as possible, but maybe you have something that's important, but it doesn't need to be seen immediately. You do a Minds exclusive post or something. You tell people like, hey, here's a link to this, but see the full report on mine. Stuff like that.
Content online. You know what Facebook really fucked up to me? When they stopped rendering YouTube videos on fucking Facebook.
Let's let them wrap up. We're over a little bit of time.
I want to say thank you guys for having me. This has been a pleasure hearing all you guys' different solutions and approaches towards all of this variety. I'm definitely going to be contacting you guys because I feel like that's what social media is it's just one massive discussion forum, some chat room where we're all supposed to be looking at problems collectively and coming together with solutions. And everything I've heard today, it just excites the hell out of me for 2019. Everybody is a master at something. You got Ryan over there talking about this. You got social media operators. You have people over here who have their own legit media operations. Everybody's a master at something. We have the solutions we need for the future right here. We just need to think about them. We legit do. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of history. That's what I got.
I don't really have a crazy following or anything, but it's been an honor just to sit here and listen to everyone, and it's been a true inspiration just to know that you guys really affect so many people. And as I'm an occupational therapist, so I affect people physically, not really, through social media, but it's just been really inspiration and even for me to want to get my knowledge and stuff out there too. So thank you guys.
So I guess I already said most of what I wanted to say. The only thing that didn't get brought up too much here is I think we also need to focus on technological innovations and stuff like that. Developing new tools, because right now we're kind of at the mercy, like whenever these guys, let's say Snapchat adds a new feature or they add the option to go live or whatever. It's like we have to adapt to whatever they're doing. They're dictating the technology right now. I think as we get together and if we do build this coalition, which I think we will, we should start putting some thought into coming out with our own innovations, our own technological developments. I think the people in this room, not only are we some of the smartest people in this industry, but we also think a lot differently than a lot of the other journalists in this industry and stuff, which gives us the advantage of coming up with new ideas that maybe no one has thought of yet. So maybe we come out with new ways of creating journalism that is just completely new, that gives us an advantage over the mainstream media and stuff like that. I think that's stuff that we can be capable of if we put our heads together. And also, kind of going back to what Sterlin said, is looking to the crypto world for helping us get the resources together to create these technologies is a good idea too, because I personally, with the Anti-Media, we partnered with the Library Blockchain platform, and they paid our developer to create a plugin which puts all of our, whenever we publish blogs now, it gets all of our content is backed up onto the blockchain. And so there's definitely opportunities there where we can partner up with these blockchain firms to help us create these technologies where we may not even have to pay for very much of it. A lot of these projects are willing to foot the bill because they want more people using their technology. So I think that's really one thing that we just didn't talk about that much, but it's something that we could, as we go forward with the coalition, we can focus a little more time on.
So just 3 last things. Thank you guys all so much for being here. Like sincerely, you're all family, you're all tribe. Second, don't forget we still have a few things left in the other room. So I think there's like a few posters, whatever, just make sure you grab that before you leave. And then also, let's try to take a picture before we call it.
And I don't know what everybody's doing tonight while you're in town, but if it's possible for us all to be at one place without the universe splitting apart, then we should try to.
What's that place where they have the live music where you always put the bands at down?
Last concert country?
Yeah, is that like
Down Warehouse?
Yeah, with the outdoor seating and all that shit. What about that place? That'd be like a.
Let's check it out. Let's get this picture.
Hey, can we end it by your saying, Derick? What's your saying?
With my positive affirmation.
Yeah, that's what I
Hey, we're in the group how. Anybody want to participate in the group how? I heard a suggestion. I'm always down behind. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching online. We're done for the day, and we'll send out the email shortly.
Where do y'all want to take the pictures?
Outside.
Let's do it outside.
Yeah, that's fine.
Hey,
It's like it's exciting. What else?
if we have a green screen,
We got to stack these chairs up.
everybody do it. Can we have a green screen like CNN? Look at that.